3 minutes of counting. You go.
We're on our way.
You doing the awards first, or
We are gonna do those. We had a cancellation for the last speaker.
okay?
So we're gonna do those. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
We're already
I was waiting for the awards to happen, and I was like, oh, maybe. Cool, just let me know whenever.
You can just wait right there.
Phil?
Okay, if we can start getting back to our seats, we're gonna get going with the afternoon session here in
Yeah.
1 minute.
Okay, I was looking at an outdated version. I was thinking I was.
Yeah, I
doing
had an
something.
outdated one too.
I am looking
Oh,
after you. I
sorry.
looked at the outdated
Yeah,
one. I'm like, I lied to you. I thought I was before, after you. Here I am.
Okay, so.
Oh, let me plug the vacuum for you.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
It should work. We will work. See here, right? Here's anything from here.
Mine's up here.
I ate out of a box with camera on my truck.
Silent video. Yeah.
Well, for you and your paper.
Technically, that's the second. The first slide is like a video.
Oh, my God.
So it is.
That's exciting.
If we can start finding our way to our seats or finding now, we'll get started here. So we can try and stay on schedule.
What are you, 40 miles? Oh, yeah. Let me know when you do it.
I'm working on it, man. I'm trying. Jeez. It's that after lunch slump, you know?
Come back.
Giant rain bag. I deleted that slide from there, but that was in the spring meeting where Mike had someone just pick a random number and that was the post. If you want to do it unknowing, that's what
Okay, okay. I'm just gonna make everyone stand up. Yeah.
hopefully they all got the.
I did.
And they're on to 11:30 or
Yep.
if we have time for questions, we have time for questions.
Big deal, big deal.
All right, we're gonna get going with the afternoon session. We should be rolling for those out on Zoom right now. You should be able to see and hear, hopefully, everything that's going on. And well, we're gonna get going with our first presenter of the afternoon, Andrea. And Woodlands, Wilderness and Development.
All right, can you all hear me? Did I get my mic on ready? Excellent. So Jesse was talking about how he got the short stick by being between the business meeting and lunch, but I think I got the short stick being immediately after lunch. So if you could all join me and stand up. If you've got this lovely packet of information, please refer to page 4. Do a little wiggle and pick your favorite number. And on page 4, we have a selection of yoga poses for lung health. So if you could all pick a yoga pose or two, hold it for about 30 seconds, and then sit back down and I'll get started. And I'm going to number 3. Free pose.
Credit for number 19.
Yeah, if you get number 20, I have a prize for you for anyone who's doing number 13 or 20. If you want to come up here and do one of those, that would be great. Well, okay. All right, you can sit back down. Thanks for playing around with me. So my name is Andrea Denham. I'm the Executive Director of the Upper Peninsula Land Conservancy. We are based out of Marquette, that's where our office is, but we serve the entire Upper Peninsula. So in 12 counties of the Upper Peninsula, we manage land. And this is going to be kind of a lightning round here of an intro to UPLC and what we do, specifically what we do with working forests. So that's my email up there. And if I could have Drew, one of our board members, raise your hand. And then Brian, where'd you go? Brian does a lot of our on the ground forestry work. So if you have any technical questions, come find me, come find Drew, find Brian. And of course, I have email signups, brochures, all sorts of great information that you can come find me afterwards. But I'll try to save time for some questions. So first of all, who knows what a land trust is? Ooh, nice. Okay, we've got a couple in here. Land trusts are a 501c3 non-governmental, not-for-profit, mission-driven organization. Specifically, land trusts are a qualified conservation organization. That's a technical term within the IRS. That means that we work very specifically to protect critical conservation lands. Of course, UP Land Conservancy. We work all the way across the Upper Peninsula. We started off as the Central Lake Superior Land Conservancy in 1999. So we are almost 25 years old, which is very exciting. The main ways that we work, our values are very specifically conservation for the sake of the ecosystem or the environment, for nature, conservation for the sake of our community, and excellence and integrity in everything that we do. Because of those values, we are the only UP-based, UP-wide land trust that's achieved national accreditation through the Land Trust Alliance, which means that we kind of got the Better Business Bureau stamp of approval in that you can, when we say we're going to protect land forever, we are backing that up with a promise of integrity, community focus, and ethical conduct, financial responsibility, that sort of a thing. So like I said, we have permanently protected about 6,546 acres of land. I'll get to it in a second. We're about to jump that up by another 180 acres within the next 7 days. Thank you. I'm very excited. Of that, we have 12 conservation easements, 24 working forests, and 27 conservation easements, 24 working forests, and 12 dedicated nature preserves. So again, this is kind of lightning round. We also do education, outreach. We have nature, we have trails. We work with the North Country National Scenic Trail to protect segments of the North Country Trail from, losing their access to trail when landowners change or having to put their trail out on roads. We work with McCain on Trail Network, the Iron Ore Heritage Trail. And we also work with Michigan State University Extension, Michigan Tech, Northern Michigan University, all sorts of folks to get hands-on learning in the forests across the Upper Peninsula so that we can, we've heard a lot this morning about the issue of not having a lot of new foresters coming into the field. We want to work with you all, everyone here in this room, to help be a part of that solution. Like I said, we do this in 3 main ways. We really focus on protection, access, and community. So has anyone here ever heard of a nature preserve? Anyone been on a nature preserve that you know of? Okay, I'll go through this one pretty quick. Nature preserves are a pretty standard idea. We own the property, fee simple. We manage it for its ecosystem services and for its community, the good things it brings to the community, whether it's a watershed that feeds drinking water or whether it's an area that is loved by a community that was under threat of development. We work with the community to save those. Who here knows what conservation easements? Anybody? Okay, more hands on conservation easements. Great. So I'll go over this one pretty quickly. Conservation easements are highly unique legal agreements between a private landowner and a qualified conservation organization, such as ourselves, where we will work directly with that landowner to make sure that they can continue using the property, living on the property, hunting the property, doing sustainable timber management, responsible timber management on the property. But no matter who owns it in the future, if they pass it on or sell it, it will never be mowed down and turned into a McDonald's, right? So we act as a third party that comes in, and we actually own parts of the rights of that property. And we can come in and enforce that. If in the future, a different landowner trespasses, or if a third party comes in and trespasses on that land, we can be a support to that landowner to help do restoration efforts. And what I'm really here to talk to you about today are our Forest for the Future reserves. So some of you in this room might know Fred Prince. Anyone? We got a couple of hands in the middle here. I knew I would. Awesome. So Fred Prince, before he passed, bought a lot of land in the UP. He was a huge lover of northern hardwood forests and of the forest production system. When he passed, he dissolved his company, or his nonprofit, where he held all these lands, called Forest for the Future, out to conservation organizations such as UPLC. So we took those properties and we are working at our hardest to carry on Fred's legacy and Fred's dream by specifically working with NIAX and Compass Land Consultants, Green Timber Consulting Foresters. We sat down and we said, hey, can we take these huge, large-scale climate change adaptation theories and scale them down? Can we say, we've got 40 acres over here, 100 acres over here. Can we take these huge 300-year plans that have different scenarios built out into them for carbon, for demographic shift, for transition of plants coming through, and can we bring that to everybody? You know, so we're part of this kind of larger experiment. I'd love to talk with you a little bit more after this, because we've got some research opportunities for you. You know, a lot of the properties that Fred passed on to us were undermanaged, overmanaged, poorly managed, had diseases moving in, were under threat for our hemlock woolly adelgid was coming in nearby. So we worked with a ton of people to kind of look at all of these from a landscape level and say, what is best for the Upper Peninsula with the changes that we see coming, and how can UPLC be a resource, and not only to the forests themselves, but to our landowners and our landowner community to continue having productive, healthy forests that provide ecosystem services across the UP. So I basically already said that one. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about one of our properties called the Devilac Forest Reserve. It's in Trinary area. I actually drove by it on my way here this morning. And we have done a couple of SAF tours on Devilac. Has anyone been on a UPLC tour to Devilac? Couple people? Okay, well, we'll be doing another one again. Michael, where are you? We'll be doing a tour with the American Bird Conservancy out there at some point here shortly. So sign up for my email list in the back and find me after. Yes. Yep, the vast majority of these properties are still in CFR. Yep. We're still managing them. They're under CFR. They're open to the public for hunting, fishing, all of that fun stuff. And some of them, we are specifically moving them towards being more educational centers for groups like this, for the Society of American Foresters to come out and learn from what we're doing. Great question. So our Devilac Reserve is kind of our baby. It's a good example of what we do. What we're trying to do with these properties is mimic natural turnover, natural changes such as forest mosaics, blowdowns, wind steps, that sort of a thing. So here on Devilac, we're using Femmelschlag. Is anyone? Couple people? Nice. Okay, so it's expanding gaps is what I think it roughly translates to. So what we're doing on Devilac, if you see on the photo, particularly in the south, is about every 10 years we're going in and we're cutting a hole. So we start off by cutting a circle, and then we underplant that with more desirable species. The Devilac was 98% single-aged, single species property. Cash crop, beautiful. You know, a lot of folks in this room would probably look at that and go, yes, you know, we can do a lot with this property. But there was no understory. It was extremely overbrowsed. It was silent in the spring. You know, there was no birds. There was no evidence of animals using this property at all. So we decided to come in and start mimicking these natural processes, natural turnovers. And so we cut a gap, we underplant it, we take out everything that's maple, we leave behind anything else, literally anything else, the ironwood, the cherry trees, whatever else might be growing. And then we underplanted it with hemlock, we underplanted it in different areas with white pine, spruce, that sort of a thing. And then in 10 years, we go out and we cut a ring around that first gap. And we do this kind of in a mosaic pattern across the entire property every 10 years. So we get the gap and then we expand it by a bit and we underplant that. And then in 10 years, we'll go back and we'll expand that. We'll do another ring around it, underplant that. And then the goal here is to within about 100 years, so this is a long-term plan, have the entire forest turn over and become an incredibly biodiverse, age diverse, and continuing to be productive in terms of its forest products as well in the face of climate change that we're looking at here. So one of the ways that we are tracking our success with this, we've only done 3 cuts, two and a half cuts, I think, 2 small cuts recently on the Devilac. One of the ways we're tracking this is by doing breeding bird surveys and nesting bird surveys. So we started, before we started cutting anything on Devilac, we would do bird surveys and then we'd come back in a few months later and see how many of those birds decided to stick around during their nesting season. And we've been doing this every year since 2014, I want to say. And I'm happy to state that not only are we seeing more birds coming in, different types of birds coming in, but we're also starting to see other types of animals and flowers and other types of natural biodiversity is returning to the area. So that's pretty fun. And this is where I'm going to have to kind of go really fast. I know I'm coming up on my time already, but our next step with our Forest for the Future program involves everybody in this room, I hope. It's collaboration time. There were 2 main goals when we started the Forest for the Future program. One of them was, of course, to restore biodiversity, continue productivity of forests, and work to take on this climate change adaptation plan and see if we could scale it down. The reason that we're trying to scale it down is because we want now to reach out to other landowners and say, hey, this is accessible. We talk about, carbon markets only being accessible to people with 5,000, 7,000 acres, tons of land. And it's been, presented that you can only do climate change mitigation on large scale, on large properties. It doesn't even matter if you're only doing it on 10 acres, but we want to take these huge plans and scale them down so that anyone in this room, I don't own any land, anyone who owns 5 acres, 10 acres, 40 acres, we want to go to them and say, this is how you can do that. You can also make a difference. The more of us doing something, the bigger of an impact it's going to have. So if you have ideas for collaboration, please come talk to me afterwards. We don't have to be the experts in how to do the adaptation, but we do have an audience that are interested and willing and want to have this information, which is kind of what we've been talking about all morning, which is really exciting. So we're kind of kicking off our education portion of our Forest for the Future program with a very exciting project called the Dead River Community Forest. Has anyone heard about this one yet? 1 hand, 2 hands, yay, okay. 3 hands, thanks, Michael. So the Dead River Community Forest is a very, very, very exciting project we've been working on for, 5 years now, and we will be closing on it on Wednesday. Yay. Thank you. We're calling it a community forest for a lot of different reasons, but we are going to be making it part of our Forest for the Future program. It is going to be an actively managed property where our very specific focus is to have it be an educational center for local landowners to come out and see the different ways that we are managing this 300 and some odd acre property for climate change adaptation. And we want to bring SAF to this property and do tours. We want to bring the American Bird Conservancy to the property to do collaborative tours. We're not necessarily the ones to go to their property and say, hey, now I'm gonna pretend I'm a consulting forester. I'm not, but you all here in this room, we want you to be able to work with us to get that sort of information out to our local landowners. So the Dead River Community Forest is super exciting. It's got amazing cold water trout habitat. We all know there's forest for fish, right? We've all, everyone's heard forest for fish? A little bit? Okay, it's a couple nods at least on that one. We're working with Trout Unlimited to make sure that we are including in our forest management plans, cold water trout stream habitats. This piece of property has a critical floodplain forest. If anyone remembers the Silver Lake Dam disaster of 2003, this property that we're working on right here acted as a sponge. And yes, it was a disaster. It made a lot of damage downstream, but if this property didn't have the intact ecosystem that it does, the devastation would have been a lot worse downstream. It just soaked up all of that. It's also in the Forest to Tap program, which you look up this particular acreage. It is in the 90th percentile of importance to the city of Marquette's drinking water because of the groundwater filtration services that it provides. So we're also building in city drinking water into our forest management plans and in our forest management education to anyone who wants to come learn about it. There will be multi-use recreation trails on it because forestry and recreation are not mutually exclusive. They're actually good friends. And of course, I've been talking about educational partnerships as well. So, and then the big thing for it being a community forest is that it's kind of not just going to be UPLC owning the property, making all the management decisions. We have a Dead River Community Forest steering committee, and everything we do, we are asking for public input for what people want to see happen out there and how they want to see it implemented. So I am here asking all of you with your superior forestry knowledge to come give me your input as to what you think should happen on this piece of property, because it is a community forest for the community by the community. So let's make this happen. Like I said, we are closing very quickly, so we have enough money to purchase the property. We are still working on raising funds for the actual building of trails, starting the educational programming where we want to work with, we've been talking to Northern Michigan University's construction management program about building some of the boardwalks and some of the staircases that are going to need to go in. So if you have any collaborative ideas, come let me know. And of course, we've got a survey that we would love people to be answering or filling out to give us your input. Come find me, join the steering committee if you want. But it is kind of our way to bring forest management to anyone who's interested. You know, we've got an interesting audience that sometimes is probably a different audience than you all have. You know, I don't know how many of you have ever been told that cutting down trees is unethical and completely wrong, but I sure have. We're the nature organization that cuts down trees. So we are using the Dead River Community Forest and our Forest for the Future program to come to people who own land in the UP, whether they're longtime residents who are noticing big changes happening in weather and in the way trees are changing, or whether they are people who, as we were just talking about, there's been a huge change in land ownership up in the UP in the last 3 years. So we're getting people from Chicago, Colorado, who have just bought land in the UP. They call us and they say, how can we make sure that this land is protected? And we say, cut your trees. And we want to work with you all to get the information to these landowners about how to make sure that our forests in the UP remain productive, continue providing clean water, ecosystem services, and keep the UP the incredible place that we all love. So with that, I think I've got just a couple minutes for questions. Yep.
How many acres is that?
Gosh, I think we cut maybe an acre, maybe just a single acre patched all over the 320 acres. So we might have done a 40-acre cut. Oh, there you go. Ask Brian. That sounds about right. So for anyone who didn't hear that, Brian from Green Timber is one of our consulting foresters on the project, and he the question was, how big was our first gap at the double X? And it was, our first cut was about 31 acres, and our second cut, that expanding ring, was about 35 acres. Thank you. Told you to ask him any technical questions. Go ahead.
You were saying that the first thing you tell the landowner is cut the trees. Why?
That was a bit of an exaggeration, but so much of the question was, why do we tell people to cut their trees? That was, of course, a bit of an exaggeration, but the principle is so much of the UP private land ownership has often been maybe overmanaged, undermanaged, poorly managed, hasn't been managed since the 1930s. So, we want to encourage people to actively manage and to be involved with their forest, get to know them, get to know what the forest needs, and not just leave it sit.
So that would be getting rid of all.
It would depend on each property. Yeah. So we don't act as consulting foresters. We act as conduits of information. So great question.
Yeah,
Hey.
thanks, good presentation. Now, where do you get your money?
That's a great question. So we are a nonprofit. You ever see that donate button up there? It has a 501c3 non-governmental mission-driven organization. We do rely on donations from folks like you to do the work we do. We, of course, are harvesting some of our trees. So sometimes we do have a portion of those harvests get put back into the lands that we manage in our underplanting. Some of that does go into my paycheck. And then we do have some grants that we run. Mike Smalligan was here. Where'd you go? Oh, you're right there, right in front of me. We did a really lovely small grant with the DNR last year. Those signs are up and they are beautiful, by the way. To do forestry education. So one of our other properties now has a 9-sign forestry signage trail. It's really cool. Does that answer your question? Anyone else? Okay.
Well, thank you.
So our next speaker will be Michael from talking about birds and forestry. And we'll get the presentation pulled up. Just pulled up here. Forestry for birds.
All right, can everybody hear me well? Yeah. Cool. So Andrea, thank you for not making me go right after lunch. Before I saw she was coming up to present, I thought I was gonna be the one right after lunch, so I was kind of thinking, I'm gonna be talking while everybody's sleeping. But I hope you guys are interested in talking about forestry and birds today, because that is why I am here. So first off, how many people have heard of American Bird Conservancy before? Okay, so half and half. How many people have heard about our Forestry for Birds program? So even less. So first off, American Bird Conservancy, we are also a nonprofit organization. We are spread throughout the entire, we do work across North and South America. So we technically cover the whole Western hemisphere. Most or all of our staff currently is based out of the US, but we have people that do international work. And then we have our Great Lakes team. So I am a forester based out of Marquette. We have Emily Locke. Sorry to put you on the spot for a second. She's another one of our foresters based out of Baraga. And over the past couple of years, we as ABC, along with many other partners throughout the state, have been working on this Forestry for Birds program. So if any of you happen to remember the spring of 2021 conference, my predecessor, Kayla Knoll, gave another presentation along these same lines. I'm not going to give that repeat presentation today, but just to give a quick refresher for anybody who may not know what our Forestry for Michigan Birds program is. Back in 2008, there's a program out of Vermont created by the Vermont Department of Recreation and Vermont Audubon. They created a program called Foresters for the Birds. And the idea was to be able to create information and share information with professional land managers and foresters on how forest management is impacting bird habitat and how we can use your work to do good work for birds. So that program, what I have on the screen here is a couple of screenshots of the front cover for each of these different guides that have taken off throughout the states. Since Vermont has kind of led the charge in these programs, these similar programs have been popping up throughout the states. We've got one from New York, Maine, now Michigan, of course. We've got a fledgling starting in Minnesota. We're trying to get it in Wisconsin as well. And it's kind of spreading throughout the entire country. So getting this idea for birds and thinking more about bird habitat into the management that we are doing. So Forestry for Michigan Birds started a couple years ago, back in 2018 was kind of the initial brainstorming year. And then Kayla took kind of the reins of the whole program. We had a stakeholders meeting back in 2019. And then we started looking for funding opportunities and finally got some a solid secure grant to be able to fund a lot of the work that we've been doing. And I will be talking about some of the materials that we've created and have for you to use in your work, as well as with landowners that you work with. So now we have these materials and we are kind of doing outreach throughout the entire state. We've had a couple workshops up in the UP. We've had one and a couple presentations in the northern lower peninsula, and we're continuously kind of spreading the word at the moment. I just wanted to, for anybody who can see the screens, I just kind of wanted to bring attention to the group of people that have been helping Kayla and myself as part of this effort. So we have a couple steering committees. Keith Kintai has been great to work with, and we got a couple other people that have just been, while I graduated from Michigan Tech in a forestry degree, I've had to learn a lot about birds the past couple of years. So the people that know more about birds than I do have just been a huge resource to both me as well as Kayla, because I know Kayla was in the same kind of realm as me. But if you have not yet seen our materials that we have produced, these are our guides. We have two different versions. We have one that is a little bit more detailed for you guys as the professionals. And then we have a more slimmed down, less jargony version for landowners who aren't as familiar with what the term silviculture means. So the manager's guide goes a lot more into details that you guys may be familiar with and thinks about it in a silvicultural perspective. And then the landowner's guide is about half as long, just with a little less easier to read, quicker to read. So if you are looking for a digital version of these to pass around, we have a webpage on Michigan Audubon's website, so michiganaudubon.org. And if you go and click on our conservation impact slide, you can find our spot and it'll pop up our webpage. We've got both the different guides. We've got a couple different PDFs of the habitat data sheets that we've also kind of put as part of these guides. So you can just click on a couple links instead of having to try and pull those worksheets out of the guides themselves. So why are we doing this forestry for birds work?
Bird
It's-
population's declining.
Yep, that is a big issue. So for anybody that is not familiar with bird populations lately, a couple years ago, ABC and Cornell Lab of Ornithology and many other partners released a study in the journal Science that documented over the past, I think like since the 1970s, the Breeding Bird Survey has been documenting a decline in the overall bird populations throughout North America. Grassland birds have been hit the hardest. So about 50% of grassland birds have declined. Is it, Emily? Is it 50% or am I 30? I might be wrong. Maybe I need to go look at that when I get up again. But forest birds, we've lost about 17%. And so that's where our work kind of comes in, thinking about how our management is impacting bird habitat. And with this forestry for birds work, I think it's a great storytelling mechanism, being able to tell how our work through silviculture and forest management is impacting or benefiting birds. So we are also a nature organization that tells people to cut down trees, but in certain ways. So, and I just wanted to bring up a couple quotes that I found on Vermont Audubon's website for their Foresters for the Birds. I thought these quotes were just they kind of caught my eye for a minute. So the first quote, I'm not going to read these, but I just thought it was really interesting. This Foresters for the Birds participant, the workshop participant, really saw a collaboration and communication work together between the organizations leading the workshop, leading the material. And that's what we kind of want to do, is we want to be able to work with you guys to be able to share the story of sustainable forest management and how we can work through birds as a storytelling mechanism for that good work. The second quote that I have here is, as foresters, and this one may not apply to all of us that don't directly work with private landowners, but that's a big part of my job, and I know many of you do. So when you're out working with landowners, sometimes the only thing that's really on a landowner's mind is deer, whereas that's not really all of the things that's on our mind. So with our excitement and our energy for something besides deer or whatever management that the landowner is thinking about, we can be able to kind of just share a little bit of a different story with them and try and get them excited about something that we're interested in, while still being able to try and meet their goals. Because while we try, or in my eyes, I'm trying to do good bird habitat management, a lot of the times that can easily be roped into good game species wildlife management. And then the third quote is just something that I felt hit me a little bit personally, because I remember growing up, and I grew up in the Thumb area in lower Michigan. Not a lot of trees down there, a lot of cornfields and soybeans and sugar beets. But of course, we still had our typical common birds, so black-capped chickadees and blue jays specifically. I remember when I was younger, I would hear these chickadees and I had no clue what they were. I just knew they were birds and I knew they were singing. So they're sitting there. So I would call back to them. Although it's really hard to whistle with braces right now, so bad whistling. And blue jays. I remember seeing blue jays flying across and flying all over, and I think blue is my favorite color, so I thought blue jays were awesome. But now I've had a couple of years of learning about birds and learning about blue jays and what blue jays sound like, and I can hear one, and I think it is the most annoying bird now. But it's just another way to look at our work. You hear something in the woods now, and it's like, oh, now I know what that bird is. Now I know that that's a black-throated green warbler. or I hear a Blackburnian warbler, and it's just changes your thinking just slightly. But why Michigan? So we're all very well familiar that Michigan is very, very forested, or 20 million acres. That makes a lot of bird habitat for our state. What even just a couple years ago, I was not aware of the migration flyways. But Michigan is kind of part of two different important migration flyways in North America. We have in Michigan, we have our two Atlantic and Mississippi flyways, and then there's two more flyways, but I can't remember what they're out west, and I can't think of them at the moment. But we have a lot of birds that pass through our areas. There's a lot of spots in Michigan that are even hot spots for migration. So along the western coast of Michigan, along Lake Michigan, and then going from the Saginaw Bay, we have birds that migrate across the Plum area up into Tawas Point, and then little Whitefish Point. A lot of really hot spot areas around Michigan to provide sites for these birds, and being able to provide habitat for these birds is just for Michigan. We have so much potential for helping them. And in Michigan itself, we've got 220 220 different birds that have been confirmed breeding in our state. So it's not just a couple birds here and there. We have a lot of different bird species that utilize our great state. So back to the guides that I've been talking about. So there are plenty of these things that I have available over at my table. Please, if you are interested and would like some, I have lots. Don't let me leave here, or let me leave here with zero. So you can take stacks if you have landowners that you want to pass these off to. There's stacks for managers' guides as well. And I'm happy to share them all with you. But now I want to just kind of briefly break down how we have these laid out. We start off talking about our priority bird species. We have 20 birds. Then we break that down. We look at the forest habitats, the forest layers, or the forest types across the state. It's kind of hard sometimes to categorize forests. So this was a talking point within our steering committee for quite a while. But then we look at the landscape level and then the stand level features that we talk about for bird habitat. And then we end off with trying to incorporate silviculture, or things to look at when you're planning your silvicultural practices. To give you an idea of what some of our bird profiles look like, we have our 20 different bird species, and each bird species goes over nesting sites. We start off with the older age class, and I see you guys can't see what I just put up there, but we'll see if I can get a couple more arrows on the screen for those that are in person. But we start off with the forest age classes, because some birds only use old forests, some birds use young forest, and then talking about song characteristics or song ID by sight. Most of the time when you're in the woods, you're probably going to need to know what a bird sounds like, because you're never going to see it. At least that is in my opinion. And then we talk about the food requirements, the nesting sites, the different territory size. And we also tried to incorporate a little bit of information from our friends at NIAX to talk about climate change and how that is going to be impacting birds and their habitat. And then we end each profile off with a little bit of information about what management could be beneficial for each birds. And we included a nice diagram to give you kind of a visual perspective. It's very, well, obviously you can see it's kind of cartoonish, but it's to give you an idea So it might be hard to see on a screen right now, but here in the broad-winged hawk that I have circled, we've got water features included, a mixture of hardwood and deciduous trees, old trees, openings. So when you're looking at these diagrams, kind of pay attention to those different things. And then the next point that I'm going to mention is the stand level characteristics. This is kind of one of the things that I think is a big part of the information we provided in the guides. It might be it's summarized information or simple information. We're talking about snags, we're talking about canopy gaps, vertical structure, horizontal structure, looking at the landscape level. To some of us, it might be something we're used to talking about, but it's also very important for bird habitat. And I think this information is just a good way to kind of get us to take a step back from looking at a tree for just the timber volume. But instead we can look at it, the birds are going to say, where am I going to get my food? Where am I going to get water? Where am I going to live? We all kind of need the same thing. We also need to be able to say those same things. I have my own house. I'm able to go buy my food. I have somebody else grow it for me, but birds don't have that luxury. They can't do it themselves. So we have to kind of help them with that as well. And then, as I mentioned, we get into a little bit of the silvicultural ideas for our bird or our guides. So we're not here to kind of say, you have to cut this or you have to cut this. We want to say more along the lines of, have you thought about this and how that's, have you thought about making this canopy gap just a little bit bigger? How is that going to impact the habitat that we have on the ground? And, or have you thought about leaving just a couple trees in your clear cut rather than a 100% clear cut? Because those little tiny things can have a huge different impact for birds in their habitat with during your management. So most of us are probably aware silviculture is kind of an art and a science. Bird habitat is just another part of that art and science perspective. So we know what birds will use what features in their habitat, what they like, what they don't like. And then we try to share that information with you guys and say, go make it happen. Go do the good work. And then in our guides, we also provide a couple data sheets that you guys can use if so inclined to just use as a way to collect information specifically on bird habitat. And another way that I look at these is, again, that kind of mental checklist to be able to say, okay, there is a nice layer of leaf litter. That's going to be great for oven birds. They need leaf litter because for anybody that's not aware, oven bird is called that because the nest it makes is out of leaf litter that's shaped like an oven. Little things like that is a good way to just kind of take a moment to think. And then over time, I think it would be expected. You can use, or you'll know the information without having to use a data sheet, for example. So to just give you a little bit of information or ideas on where we as a Forestry for Birds program are continuing to expand and grow. We are continually going to be doing outreach workshops, whether that's going to be more educational opportunities for you guys, or if it's more opportunities for outreach to private landowners, because private landowners are a huge constituent in our state for foresting. And the Audubon Vermont and Audubon New York have been working on an endorsement program for foresters. And I don't remember specifically how to find the website, but if you Google Audubon Vermont Foresters Endorsement Program, I think you'd be able to come up with the webpage. And they have a couple of videos on it that what they're doing is you have to watch through these videos. You can get some CFE credits and you work with the Audubon Vermont to get an endorsement. Now, I should back up a second. They are only doing this in Vermont and New York, of course. It's still kind of in a pilot phases, but what I'm hoping to do in Michigan is be able to bring a similar version over to our state so we can help you guys learn, of course, more about birds, be able to tell your landowners that you work with or the public that you communicate with that you have been working with us. We have said, yes, you know what you're doing. You know how to make good bird habitat. And then we let you guys carry on with your work. We're also looking to be able to create demonstration sites. So we're kind of growing our partnerships as ABC throughout the state to be able to provide habitat work to all of you and all our partners and be able to show and share with the public the work that we do with bird habitat and forestry. It's another way to kind of look and maybe get those people that are saying, no, cutting trees is bad. It's another storytelling mechanism. And then we also want to be able to provide you guys the assistance with being able to include knowledge and information from our materials and our work into the management planning that you guys do long term. So if anybody needs or wants to chat more about how to do that, I'll talk about in just a minute, but feel free to reach out. So to just kind of wrap things up, what can you guys do now? I think one of the easiest ways to just get started is just start learning a couple birds. Take a couple of our 20 different priority species and learn what it looks like. Like right on the cover of our landowner's guide, we've got our black-throated blue warbler. I like to think it looks like a tuxedo because he's got a nice black suit and on the wing, the little white patch is literally called a handkerchief, as from what I've heard from other people describe it as. So, and then learn how it sounds. It's just another way to start to kind of grow yourself and learn what we are doing with our work. And then, of course, learning which birds are going to be where, because learning what birds are in which habitat is going to be narrowing down a lot of what birds you might be expecting or working with in your area. And incorporating it into your management plans, like I mentioned before. Now, this is going to look different for each person. Everybody's management plans look differently. Everybody has a different writing style. So there's no one right way to do it. And I like to steal a line from Stephen Handler at NIAX when he says, what do you do for climate change? And he likes to say, it depends. And I'm going to say the exact same thing here with bird habitat. What do you do for incorporating bird habitat? It depends. There's a lot of different variables. So, one phrase that I like to steal from the president of ABC, Mike Parr, he likes to commonly say, if the birds could thank you, they would. So, through the work that you guys do, you'll be creating good habitat. We want to be able to expand our program, work with you more, and do good work across the state. And that's all.
That's, I think the beginning. One thing with the Zoom, with the tech on here, with having it on the display and having to be over on another screen, I gotta take the mouse all the way over there, so it's just. Yeah.
Question,
Go ahead.
like on some of these birds, are there grants if you perform the ideal habitat in an area? Like say I'm a private landowner, I have 40 acres and I'm really interested in birds. Are there certain grants for certain birds?
Not at the moment. When it comes to funding, my first thought goes to using the NRCS programs. As a staff member with ABC, the NRCS is a huge partner for
Okay,
us.
the NRCS, say I have a plan with the NRCS.
Mhm.
Somebody did my plan and mentioned, say a golden wing warbler. And, I have maybe like 20 acres in there. They would supply the grant.
So yes, if you're referring to our Golden Wing Warbler program, for anybody that is not aware, ABC works with the NRCS to provide landowners money and assistance to specifically create habitat specifically for this Golden Wing Warbler.
Okay.
So it is money from the NRCS program, but you'd be working directly with me in Michigan.
If you would have to approve, say, if the plan was written, you would have to be involved in consulting how to do it right.
Correct.
Okay.
I guess my question was similar. Just wondering what kind of programs there are to subsidize this kind of management, and I just came off of a silviculture instructors tour going through West Virginia and Pennsylvania, and we learned about cerulean warbler management, and there's some subsidies for landowners to apply management for cerulean warblers there.
Did you already talk about that?
Sure, do you? I don't have a great, well, let me say what I'm gonna say and then you can fill in. In Michigan, the one thing I really know most about is our Golden Wing Warbler program. I don't know about any other subsidy programs per se. In Michigan, at least for cerulean warblers, we don't have a huge population. There's a little bit in kind of the very southern edge of the lower peninsula. But once you get further north, we're in very different habitat types. And in the Northwoods, I think the Golden Wing Warbler is one of the more in declining populations.
Hi, I'm a recipient of the Golden Wing Warbler project. I have 17 acres of tag alder that was ground down for the purpose of the Golden Wing Warbler habitat. It cost about $9,000. I got a rebate of 7,000-ish from the program. I also get $2,000 a year to maintain it from the NRCS. So it's been working out pretty good. I got a brush hog and chemicals, and I'm also fighting buckthorn. That's become an avocation instead, or it's almost an occupation. But it worked out really, really well. I had this area of tag alder that I owned for 22 years. Never went into it. Okay, it was very overgrown, crisscross. They took that stuff out. I put paths in there. I'm out there every day, walking the dog through it. I have people that show up for serenity walks. I have a Lutheran minister that comes out at least once a week and walks around there. He's also a birder, so it's really kind of nice because he gives me little reports about the birds that are coming in there. So, and we've done a lot of planting, underplanting with I don't know, 15 or 16 different kinds of shrubs and a bunch of different trees. So we manage it. That's part of the money that they give us for management is both for exotic species control, trails, and we have to brush hog 1/4 of it every year to keep it in the proper age group. So it's worked out. That's a really fantastic program that they worked very closely with me. I wrote a stewardship plan afterwards and I got it approved. I'm a tree farm person now, so I got all kinds of stuff going on here. So it's been very, very enjoyable. So it's a great program, and the bird population has just exploded out of my place. It's not just the yellow wing warbler, but they're kind of like an indicator for everything else that needs that kind of habitat. Worked really well.
So the tag alder grows up just like grass does? Yeah, and we go down and mow it down every year.
You do.
Yeah, I got a brush hog. I go through 1/4 of my property and take it out every year. And the aspids coming in real good too.
We have one over here.
Hi, Mike. Let's say I have a landowner who wants to manage for bird habitat, but they don't have any particular species in mind, specific species. What's one mechanical harvesting technique that a procurement guy could recommend that would suit improve habitat improvement for a variety of species? Thank you.
I think with that, what I would start off with is what's the type of forest you're working in? I mean, some birds are only going to be in that forest, and with bird habitat, The way I think about it is some birds are going to really like your management that you're doing already. Other birds are not. There's going to be winners and losers in just about every management perspective and management action. So what I would start off with looking at is what is the current condition of the birds out there or the bird habitat? Is there are you looking at a typical UP northern hardwoods where there is a nice overstory and nothing in the understory? That's an area where what we want to do is promote that mid-story layer. We want to get that vertical screen structure. So opening gaps may be a little bit bigger than a single tree gap so that you can get more sunlight. Also being able to promote different species diversity. So does that kind of help a little bit?
Awesome, thanks, Michael.
And we'll move on to our next speaker before we get on to a break. Keith Kintai with the DNR. Here to talk about habitat conservation plan for the northern long-eared bat.
That sound. How's that? All right. Oh man, what happened? Console.
Do something with the editing, but this should be working.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Kentai with Michigan DNR. In my job, I coordinate our forest certification program on our 4 million acre state forest system. That's a little bit of my job. Big part of my job is rare species program coordination and coordination of our conservation area network, our protected places on state forest land. And with the rare species work, I've been spending a lot of time on this bat habitat conservation plan, and I'd like to give you a little more information about that today. Let's see which is it the arrow or the top one here? There we go. So specifically, I'm going to talk about the need for a habitat conservation plan, why the heck we're even doing one in Michigan. I'll tell you a little bit about the development process. I'm going to talk about the content in the habitat conservation plan and what that's going to mean for forest management in the state of Michigan. I'm going to provide you with an update on the listing status of the species that are involved, the bat species that are involved in this plan. And then lastly, we'll talk about our expectations about implementation of the HCP, which is coming very soon. So first, a little bit about bats. We have 8 bat species in Michigan. That last one, evening bat, it barely comes into southern Michigan. So really we have 8. But what we're going to mostly talk about today are these 4 species at the top, which are the smallest of our species in the state. They're all forest dwelling. They all have a number of characteristics in common that I'll talk to you about, and that's little brown bat, northern long-eared bat, Indiana bat, and tricolored bat. And you'll see little brown bat was historically statewide in its distribution. Northern long-eared bat was also statewide in forests. Indiana bat was really just in the southern third of the lower peninsula, really a southern Michigan forested species. And tricolored bat really just came into the western UP of Michigan in its historical distribution. So what's common about these 4 species that I mentioned? First, they all hibernate colonially in abandoned mines, caves, and some other structures. So what's most significant for us in Michigan are abandoned mines as hibernacula sites. Tippy Dam is also an important, down in Manistee County, is an important hibernacula site. And some of the species will also use structures like houses and barns. What's also common amongst these species is that they have a swarming behavior, meaning they concentrate around their hibernacula in the spring and the fall. So as they come out of the hibernacula, they concentrate around the hibernacula for a month or so. And then in the fall, they also concentrate before they hibernate. And what's unique among them, even among mammal species, is they have delayed fertilization. They breed in the fall, and then that fertilization is delayed, and then late into the winter and early spring, the egg in the female becomes fertilized, and then they have a single young. All 4 species just a single young in the summertime, which leads me to the third characteristics that's common about them, that the females and the young congregate in forests in maternal roosting colonies, which are most often in trees, but can also be in houses or barns. And that occurs in June and July. And the other similar thing is all 4 species have similar habitat requirements in the most general sense. And the highest quality habitat at the site level includes larger trees, so large poles into log-sized trees that have craggy bark or cavities or broken limbs and hanging dead foliage. And you think about these maternity roosting colonies and how bats would concentrate, they require that type of cover. And then at the, well, I'm not gonna be able to figure that out. And at the landscape level, it would include patches of forest in association with open water for drinking, and then foraging sites, which could include more open forest lands, edges, and swamps. They all of course forage on insects. So unfortunately, as colonial hibernators, these 4 species are all susceptible to a new disease that has occurred in North America. And this is white nose syndrome, which most of you probably heard about. And white nose syndrome got its name from the fungus itself, which when it grows on bats on their open skin, it forms a white fuzz. And this fungus thrives in cold, humid environments, which is exactly what the hibernacula are, somewhere around 50 degrees and humidity 80 to 100%. And the problem is, though bats, when they hibernate, they may wake up a couple times over the winter. The fungus drains the moisture out of their skin. It causes them to wake up multiple times. And it's an energetic cost of coming out of hibernation. And so this is depleting their energy resources over winter, and they're dying in hibernacula or dying shortly after. And what I did mention that all 4 species only have 1 young, so very low fecundity rates, very low potential to rebound from a disease. But the other thing is they historically would live a long time. You think of something so small, but common lifespan for these 4 species is 10 years, and there's records of single bats living 20 or 30 years, which is really amazing when you think about little metabolism machines that they are. And so these 4 species have all been devastated in Michigan by white nose syndrome, as measured by counts in the hibernacula. So we had good data before white nose syndrome of surveys that occurred of hibernating bats in the hibernacula, and then we were able to survey through, and all 4 species based on these counts had declined by over 90%. So has anybody seen a bat recently in the summertime? Just like to ask. That's good. And I have 2, not nearly the number of bats I saw before. And the bats I'm seeing are all these larger species. So if you're seeing small bats, that's something that's really, really notable. It just really doesn't occur that much anymore. So why do we need an HCP? Well, in 2015, as a response to what was happening, I didn't mention, let me go back here. This is the map of the distribution of white nose syndrome, and you can see the color on the side there. Those are really dates, but it was first documented in North America in 2006 in a cave in New York State, and first documented in Michigan in 2015. And you can see it showing up in Western states now, still moving. How does it spread? It's a fungus that has spores. Spores are, basically invisible. Bats can spread the spores around from their fur, and then the speculation is that it was actually cavers that introduced the fungus in the first place, which, if I didn't mention, it's expected to have originated from Europe. So, pardon? Came from Europe. That's what's speculated. Yeah, that there was
People would visit caves or
Yeah.
in the United States and spread it.
Exactly. Somebody visited a cave in Europe, had some spores of this fungus in their gear, and then went into a cave in New York and introduced it, and that's how we got it. Beach bark disease, you know, there's some speculation that birds are spreading it around, and these 4 smaller species, they actually can migrate too. Not near the distances that birds can migrate, but some are migrating 200 or 300 miles. And so you can see there's great potential among the bats to spread the fungus around. So in 2015, as a result of the decline in species, Fish and Wildlife Service listed the northern long-eared bat as federally threatened. And there was a 4D rule that came out with that listing that provided provisions for continued forest management. The problem is, if the species becomes endangered, then those special provisions in the 4D rule will no longer be available. 4D rules are just for federally threatened species. There are no 4D rules for endangered species. There's other specific guidance. And for northern long-eared bat, that threatened decision was remanded by a federal judge a couple years ago. And gave the decision back to the Fish and Wildlife Service and said, this isn't justified, considering the decline in species, you need to reconsider this. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a little bit. There's this tool called an incidental take permit under endangered species law that will allow forest management continue with modifications, but will also allow for the incidental take of bats. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service can only issue an incidental take permit through an HCP. So that's why an HCP is needed. And what the HCP does, you have to think of it as this, it's really kind of a grand accounting exercise where you look at the positive benefits of management and the negative benefits of management. And the goal is to determine allowable take under that incidental take permit. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail as well. But more broadly, the HCP describes potential positive and negative impacts of forest management, as I just mentioned, and also describes biological objectives designed to provide a net positive impact for bats. And that's the goal, is to allow these covered activities to continue on, providing a net positive impact for bats. So what did the 4D rule say? The nice thing about the 4D rule is it exempted take from forest management activities, provided that those activities met a couple things, a couple conditions, and the first was that the activity occurred greater than a quarter mile from known hibernacula. You can think about the reason for that is because of the swarming behavior and concentration of bats around hibernacula entrances. It also provided that that forest management activity avoided cutting around known occupied and returning roost trees for northern long-eared bat in the state, and that time restriction was June and July. That's that vulnerable period when the maternity roosting colonies are in trees and there's a high concentration of bats in those trees. Another important characteristic of all 4 species is that they have high site fidelity to their maternity roosting trees. They tend to come back to them or to the area year after year after year. And they may switch roost trees in an area, but will have a lot of site fidelities to a particular area. And then there was also a condition there about avoiding clear cuts within a quarter mile of known occupied roost trees. And that was to protect habitat. So I think we've, in the state, we've probably been in pretty good compliance with these activities. If you've been going through environmental review for your forest management activities, maybe you had a project that was flagged because you were within a quarter mile of a known hibernacula, and that was why. Yeah, Jim.
Has there, while been under the 4D rule, has there been any documented take due to forest management activities for northern long-eared bat?
No, and you can imagine that would be almost impossible somebody would have to report that they witnessed a bat or, witnessed a bat. And I'm not aware of any reported documented take for northern long-eared bat under the 4D rule. And the reason is there just are not any bats left anymore.
We're putting a rule in for something that's not there.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to get into what endangered species law says, and Fish and Wildlife Service has an obligation to reasonably prohibit take. So they have to come up with rules that try to do that. Yes, sir.
Are there any bats that are resistant to this syndrome?
Yeah, so there is some evidence, especially further south, that little brown bats might have a little bit of resistance, and then there are individual bats that seem to have some resistance, just like with weed bark disease, where there are some individual trees just based on genetic variation. And so, with having one young per year, it's gonna take a long time for resistant bats to, for that population to grow. And there's also been some work with using fungicides and smaller and more controlled hibernacula and some other sorts of work. Spraying bats as they enter and leave, and some other kind of really interesting projects. And the larger bat species aren't as susceptible just because of their body mass. They can handle the water loss a little bit better.
What European bats transporting them here, they're resistant.
Yeah, right, different, yeah. Oh, bringing European bats here? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Yeah.
Invasive species.
Maybe, yeah. And then there's also what I didn't mention is of the 4 species, Indiana bat is already listed as federally endangered. This is really a southern Michigan species, so in northern Michigan and the UP, we just don't interact or deal with Indiana bat because it doesn't occur here. But there are guidelines in place for Indiana bat too, which are fairly restrictive. And so the recommendation and what the map shows here in yellow is modeled habitat for Indiana bat in southern Michigan across their range. And so this is Fish and Wildlife Service prediction of where high quality Indiana bat habitat is. And these this guidance states that if greater than 20 acres is harvested or greater than 10 acres is harvested within this modeled habitat, then they recommend a consult with Fish and Wildlife Service. And cutting trees greater than 5 inches that have exfoliating bark or cracks, they recommend some seasonal restrictions in harvest, which is basically excluding the summertime. You can see these are the project guidelines that exist for Indiana bat. So I'll come back to those in a minute and the consequences of that. The states of Michigan, Minnesota, and Wisconsin decided that it was in the best interest of the state and our stakeholders and our forest land stakeholders to develop a habitat conservation plan and obtain an incidental take permit, so we could have a clear understanding and a clear agreement with the Fish and Wildlife Service about protections and restrictions for bats. And so the 3 states started this effort in 2016, and this effort has continued through 2020. As I mentioned, 3 state DNRs, the Fish and Wildlife Service, and a consultant company who's helping us write it, have been working on this all that time. The work's been mostly funded through Fish and Wildlife Service grants. It's been extremely expensive, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those chapters, as they were developed, drafts, they were made public, and some of you may recall, press releases and review opportunities for these draft chapters as they were released. And we took that public comment and incorporated it into the document. We also had a really in-depth legal and DNR leadership reviews across the 3 states and a Fish and Wildlife Service review, and incorporated all those comments, and have been communicating with stakeholders in varying capacity through the development of this project. And in my case, through our SFI implementation committee and through our various advisory councils in the state, we've been communicating and providing updates. So the final draft of the HCP and the incidental take permit applications were submitted to Fish and Wildlife Service early this summer. And some of you may have noticed very recently that there was another public review under the Endangered Species Act. The Fish and Wildlife Service is, under the National Environmental Protection Act, the Fish and Wildlife Service is required to develop an ecological assessment for all HCPs. And that's what this public comment was, is their EA for the Lake States HCPs was open for public comment. That closed yesterday, the public comment period. So you're out of luck if you wanted to say something about that. And we expect that the states will get their individual incidental take permits later this fall, and these will be 50-year term. So they'll this will take permit will be good for 50 years. I gotta move. I thought there's no way I'm gonna talk for a half hour on this. Let's talk a little bit about the HCP content. First, it will provide for conservation for bats while learning for certain activities. And in the parlance, there's this term called covered activities. And so if you want to engage in these activities which have the risk of taking bats, they would be covered under this incidental take permit. What are those activities? Timber harvest and related forest practices. And on state lands and county forest lands. It also covers new road and trail construction, and will also cover prescribed fire, which is in proximity to some of these important bat locations that would have the potential to impact them. So if you wanted to do, wind development or road work or something, this incidental take permit from the states would not cover you. You'd have to seek coverage or consultation with the Fish and Wildlife Service in some other manner. The incidental take permit will cover all DNR forest lands in the state of Michigan, and so this includes our state forests, our state parks, and our state game areas. And but it also includes all 4.2 million acres of forest land, non-federal forest land in the state. And these, the term for those are called covered lands, and that defines lands that have the potential to be covered by the incidental take permit. And so, what are these other lands? Owners of these lands can voluntarily choose to participate if they would like coverage under the state's incidental take permit to continue activities. And so this, of course, includes corporate forest lands, other corporate lands like lands owned by universities, lands owned by individuals or family trusts, including land conservancies and other types of NGOs, unincorporated partnerships, and tribal lands, including tribal lands held in federal trust. And so if you notice on the plat map, sometimes you'll see BIA or Bureau of Indian Affairs lands, and those are lands, tribal lands held in federal trust. So those don't fall under the umbrella of federal lands. But to receive coverage under the incidental take permit, landowners have to meet eligibility criteria. And so how are you eligible to enroll? You can have ownership of any size that contains a known hibernacula or a known maternity roots tree. You can own land that is within that quarter mile around a known hibernacula, or you can own land that's your total land ownership is more than 500 acres or more than 10,000 acres. And the distinction there is that when I mentioned that the HCP determines risk of take, well, the risk of take based on ownership size is less for little brown bat because they were more common prior to white nose syndrome. So that's a 500 acre threshold. For northern long-eared bat and all the other bat species, it's 10,000 acres. Little brown bat's not listed yet. So you don't need coverage for little brown bat at 500 acres. So we'll probably start at 10,000 acres. And then the other unique thing about the HCP is that county forest lands of any size are also eligible to enroll. And you think about our partners who are in this, and Wisconsin and Minnesota have millions of acres of county forest land in their states. We have thousands of acres. As far as I'm aware, this only Antrim, Delta, and Gogebic counties have county forest land in the state. But if those counties choose to enroll under the HCP, they'll be eligible too. They'll be to participate in the landowner enrollment program. Landowners will have to, of course, sign an agreement that will include definition of covered lands, and will need to include estimates of harvest, both in the short term and in the long term. Will require self-monitoring and annual reporting. And we hope to conduct information sessions for the landowner enrollment program later this winter. So if you think this relates to you, or if you have clients that this could relate to, look for information on information sessions later this year. And as I mentioned, our priority is really going to be on enrolling landowners who own at least 10,000 acres. So another thing about enrollment, and this is the impact of forest management practices for the HCP. And this will be both for the state and for landowners who choose to enroll for coverage. So we'll commit landowners to manage forest land sustainably. And really what that means is to implement some specific retention guidelines. And if you're in tree farm or covered by a certification system, these retention guidelines are no surprise. I'll talk about them a little more in a minute. Talks about a requirement to protect 150-foot buffer around known maternity roost trees. And we have less than 100 known maternity roost trees in the state for all 4 species. And a good chunk of those are for Indiana bat, over 30 of them are. So, you know, at least a third of those are in southern Michigan. Requires that seasonally restrict 2.5 miles around known Indiana bat locations. So again, this is primarily a southern Michigan restriction, but that would be no harvest in June and July within 2.5 miles of those known locations. We have 37 known Indiana bat locations in southern Michigan. Maintain and protect hibernacula entrances. This is keeping hibernaculas gated. Restrict activities year round within 1/4 mile of hibernacula entrances. We have 111 known hibernacula entrances in the state. These are really primarily in the western Keys, many of you probably know. And then there's some prescribed burn stuff there, which really is impacts such a small area around hibernacula entrances and maternity roost trees. And then for state lands and county forest lands, there's also seasonal restrictions on road and trail construction. And as I mentioned, this accounting exercise for positive and negative benefits. To add additional positive benefits, the state included and got credit for the Porcupine Mountains Natural Area, which is a protected area in the Porcupine Mountains State Park. That includes a couple hibernacula entrances and lots of high quality bat habitat. So even though it's not the only high quality bat habitat we have in the state, it's an area that we identified in the plan to get credit for. As I mentioned, will require specific retention guidelines, and you can see those here for even age management, which would include default snag retention, which I think most folks are doing. Would include retaining 3 to 10% of the harvest area and uncut patches, and talks about patch size and patch distribution, riparian corridor, tree retention, and if you're following DMP guidelines in the state, that's actually less than what the DMP guidelines say, which is 70 DA. And then a bias towards large trees, having trees in mass. So, and then you can see very similar recommendations for uneven age management. And these are, if you're considering or implementing sustainable forest management, these are not really out of the realm of what most folks are doing, I would argue. And then on state land, there's also, and on county forest land, a commitment to not remove trees in new road and trail construction. This doesn't include temporary forest roads. Those are covered under forestry practices. Those would only include new road and trail construction. Landowner enrollees would not be subject to this restriction, nor will they receive coverage for it. And it includes hazard trees, and so since that doesn't, and that this is that natural area thing, so I'll skip over that. So what if you're a landowner who's not eligible for the landowner enrollment program, or you don't want to enroll in the landowner enrollment program? What's that mean for you? Well, first of all, landowners are responsible for assessing their own risk of take for endangered species. And a benefit of the HCP is that it establishes the risk of take across these different scales. And so we've set a pretty good argument that if you own less than 500 acres, your risk of take for these bat species should be small. Whether the Fish and Wildlife Service buys into that or agrees with that, we don't know. That's a really important reason that the state's engaged in this, was to set various levels of risk of take for landowners. But there's still some unknowns. Landowners, of course, have the option of developing HCPs on their own and getting their own incidental take permits. I think probably most landowners won't do this. It's a very expensive, drawn-out process. Yeah, that last point is the one I just talked about. So I'm gonna pause there and I'll finish up with a couple other slides, but just there's a lot on the landowner enrollment program. And I just wonder if there are any questions that are fresh in people's minds about that. I may run a couple minutes long. Is that okay?
In break time.
Oh, yeah. Popular. Yeah. No questions. People want me to finish. Okay. All right. So what's going on with these species? Indiana bat's already federally endangered. Some of you may have noticed a couple weeks ago, there was some press that on the 13th of September, tricolored bat, there's a proposal to list tricolored bat as endangered under the Endangered Species Act, and there was a 30-day comment period starting on that, which also served as the 12-month finding for this. And really what that means is, unless there's litigation involved, tricolored bat, the species that historically only occurred in the West UP, will be listed as federally endangered by next year. It's covered under the HCP. And so in terms of the HCP and the landowner enrollment program, we're set. The northern long-eared bat, this is the big one, and this is the one I want people to listen to and try to understand. That remanded decision is due at the end of November. And so though we don't know what's going to happen, there's every expectation that the species is going to be listed as endangered. What that means is that the 4D rule is going to go away. There's no way the 3 lake states are going to have their landowner enrollment programs done in time to provide coverage for by the time this uplisting happens. And so we're going to be subject to whatever guidance Fish and Wildlife Service puts out in association with that uplisting until we can get the landowner enrollment program going. And so do we know what that guidance is going to be? We don't. We could speculate. So it could include, statewide seasonal restriction, which would likely be no June or July harvest. On state land, that's not too impactful because, we have other restrictions that overlap that, like our oval restrictions and our bark slip cover most of that period, but we don't know. So that's the big unknown part, and that is likely to impact forest managers, at least in the short term. And then little brown bat, what's going on? This is the species that would kick off the 500-acre eligibility for the landowner enrollment program. Well, it's still in species status review. We're hearing from Fish and Wildlife Service that it's little brown bat's really complicated because of the variable response with white nose syndrome and how common it was, how farly distributed it was, because it's involved in structures a lot more than the other species. And so I doubt that we'll have a listing status for little brown bat by next year. It's probably a couple years out, but that's pure speculation on my part. So just to wrap up here with just let you know where we are in terms of implementation of the HCP. So currently I'm working really hard with the other 3 states to get our landowner enrollment programs developed, all the agreement templates and background documentation and those sorts of things, and to also develop the educational materials for both DNR staff training and for our landowner enrollment informational sessions. Our goal, and this is a really, really ambitious goal, is to begin enrollment to have those interested landowners enrolled by March 1st. Why March 1st? Because that's the beginning of the active period again for these species when they come out of their hibernation and get back into the forest. That's a really ambitious goal. I don't know if we're going to make it. And as I mentioned, our priority will be on enrolling landowners with at least 10,000 acres. I mentioned the staff training, and as soon as we have information from the Fish and Wildlife Service associated with the northern long-eared bat uplisting in the associated direction, we'll help communicate what the consequences of that uplisting are to forest landowners and how it may or may not impact forest management. So that's where we're at. I went 3 minutes over. Time for questions, or you want to catch me in the break?
Yeah, if they'd like to catch you in break, I think that would be.
Yeah, I'm good with that. All right, thanks.
Catch you right now, if that's okay. The white nose syndrome, is that increasing, declining, or is it, becoming advanced where we're not, get a hold
It's,
of?
it's in every hard.
And every,
Yeah.
so are they the best declining?
Oh, they-
Is it a shame?
No, they've been decimated. Yeah. So most of the damage has been done.
Oh, that's, I'm sorry. to hear
Yeah.
that. That's a shame.
Yeah, so there's some weird
I wonder
things.
why our mosquitoes are so rampant now.
They seem to be, like Tippy Dam seems a little different. Like Tippy Dam seems to be more stable than the mines, but yeah. In the mines, they've been,
Well, the mines are more moisture, they're deeper, they're darker, and yeah, that's kind of hard. So in reference to, depleting this white nose syndrome, you were mentioning that minor chemicals, is that working, or is there other
it doesn't,
ways, a more natural way to get rid
yeah,
of?
it can't work for mines because they're so large and complex. It
Yeah.
can work for smaller hibernacula. But
Okay,
it's a lot of these experimental treatments are inapplicable in Michigan just because of our situation.
oh, gotcha, yeah, because you want to keep it all natural. So is there a natural version instead of chemicalized? Okay, I just thought I'd try. Thank you.
Hi.
But I was wondering, is it small bags versus big bags? What's the small bag size?
Yeah, they're tiny like mice. Just a few grams. Yeah. And even our big bats are big bats. Presentation from that is that's enough body mass for them to be able to withstand weight.
So I'm just trying to put together what the ICP is.
ITP, yeah.
ICP and the HCP and the B4. So right now, these bags are kind of one of 40. And that straps me both
How did you get put in charge of this?
I know. He set up all the speakers and stuff.
Right here. I was actually getting nervous. Yeah. I can give them my.
I've also got it on my computer. That's about it. We'll put it on there. We got, yeah, just Zoom call. So, the one thing I've gotten embedded video in here, that's, I don't know.
I mean, the text.
Right, you need to be.
There was a video that they were trying to play earlier. That they kind of like. It's the bigger one. Second one. Just had to dump it on my desktop.
Last lab we were all. No.
We do have multiple microphones. Yeah, like.
Pretty uncommon. All right, keep it up, eh? We haven't tested it out yet. Project, you're like the spokesperson for it too, right?
No, I'm just the spokesperson.
Appreciate you doing this. Okay. Caution. Well, he said, well, I'm sure how you say that about that. Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's true. We want to work together and work together. That's what I do for you. Guys.
I understand you correctly. Like you said, we have to put out 3 months. On high quality habitat. High quality habitat. That's pretty much what I talked to which now. Yeah, it's you know, open market, all that. So now we're extending that recruitment season out.
Hey, we got attempt to
Even
spell
if it is just limited,
It's the,
it goes further past
you know,
July
try
15th.
test run here.
We're already limited on harvesting activities with the other restrictions we're talking about. We're basically in the middle of.
So we'll just pretend that we're gonna.
August, even there, right now, we get that in September. So now you're looking at windows down and down, all the harvest sites. Yeah, all upland, actually all upland sites, what it truly is. Pine plantation.
Close.
But after birds have NEH.
Close, you got quite a bit to it.
Modeled as a high quality bat. But where do we have the opportunity to say? Like I asked, there's been no documented take in forest ranger activities. They can use all the research they want to see if there's.
I don't know if there's gonna be any.
It's okay if they're subtitled the whole way through. so
Includes the
it's okay.
habitat to create
Okay.
the opportunity for the bats that do exit.
So if there's,
Or real costs. So if we limit that, while we're limiting the high quality habitat as well, thereby, what is the effect of that? Reduce the availability of bats that populate themselves to overcome this.
let me see if I can turn.
For that gain. Yeah. And why are we gonna limit it?
We demonstrated that. Yeah, that's the.
And also I saw gave money for more survey to find more roosters. Which would then. We've had funding for monitoring detection.
So we'll play to somebody has to hit play on here when it's there.
That's not the way I read it.
Conservation dollars. So much.
Yeah.
So. Requires us requires us to monitor.
Okay. Yeah.
So that, we're arguing.
They traded and they're there and they stay there.
Miles, but that's not gonna impact you at all. But the idea is that. But we're not gonna go looking actively for those. There's provisions that we can go to the different. We can do that over a period. That was the other. Well, what about existing roads and like maintaining and opening up existing roads? And that's not coming. So if we build a new road next to that road, that's okay. But if we take down the, if you go down some of those trails, have to take out random trees and get trucks down it, that is not okay. And it's all because of the way the model was built. It's impossible.
Yeah.
The other problem.
Well, I mean, it's not just construction, it's maintenance too. And that's my concern, not the building of new roads. It's opening up an overgrown old existing road. For long, you know, that we haven't logged on it for 30 years, now we're gonna widen the road back out.
Yeah.
That's not covered.
Yeah, there'll be.
And that's just, but that up there and what it said, it's not, the potential is a diameter. There's no, I mean, it's not any other characteristic, it's just a diameter. If the tree is X size, you can't touch it in no time, even if it's against an adjacent road. Yeah. So we will be.
Try and rein them in a little quicker this time. Yeah, we're gonna get going here in about 4 minutes. Gives me enough time to check my deer pictures. Make sure there's nothing there. It's a nice thing about having the yard right at our office now is you can just set a camera up there. Be nice and close there, but I've got another spot that I'm going to. This is the spot I'm going to take my 6-year-old. Sit behind. Yeah, and then walk a mile. Nice. Yeah. I told him sit out there back and forth. This is where I'm out in the woods. That's South Cornell. There's deer during the day there, so bucks been coming in at night. Nothing real spectacular this year. It's been I had one nice one last year when I first started bow hunting. I got my first buck last year. And first Michigan deer. It was a 10-pointer I got. Nice. First year, yeah, first Michigan. First one in the fall. It's the biggest one by far I've ever shot. I got to lower my standards down in Michigan, you know, UP standard. I'm from southern Wisconsin. Okay, that's where I went to school. So, yeah, perfect. I'm sure 2 years before. I've been out now almost 10 years. Absolutely. I checked to make sure that I didn't accidentally cancel the Zoom call. They're still there. So I'm going, yeah. I probably would have gotten a text from someone. Is having these 2 different screens and trying to go way back there. If there was another monitor or something where you could actually see up close, but it's just Yeah, it was weird. Now when I get back to the office, I'm gonna plug my laptop in. I'm gonna go, how do I get my monitors to work again? Looking at. Oh, that's our office.
Okay.
That's for at the end of the day when we're talking about tours and who's meeting where. Because I think the Billerud tour is gonna meet at our office and park and then carpool over to the mill.
You want to do that conversation during?
I'll do that after we're done with the awards. We'll save like 15 minutes for housekeeping stuff and then that'll be good. All right, we're gonna get going here. Anybody start making your way to your seat? It'll also be here. Otherwise, you gotta go over and then you can see it, but yeah. But you can hit play. Here's what I did here. You did one, yeah. All right, we're gonna get going with our last group of presenters for the afternoon. Right now we got Mike Wadowski from Billerud to talk about investments in Michigan's pulp mills.
All right, thanks for having me, everybody. As I said, my name is Mike Wadowski. I'm the Vice President of Technical Services for Billerud North America. I've been in the pulp and paper industry for a little over 30 years. Minnesota, Michigan, Maine, Wisconsin. And over the past few years, I've had the luxury, I guess, of being the mill manager at all three of Billerud North America's facilities. But most recently, my new position, I've got a lot of the technical experts in our company in my group, and we are all focused on this transformation program, which I'll be talking about for the most part today. Now, I will say that out of those 30 plus years that I've been in the industry, this is probably the most exciting time for me personally with what we've got on the horizon. So I could talk about this for a long time. I'm going to kind of go down a path here of talking about Billerud, Korsnäs, and Verso, who they were before the merger, who we are now. I'll talk a little bit about the products we intend to make in North America, and then the process or the transformation program, as we call it, of how we're going to make those products, how we're going to convert the machinery we have now to make those products, and then finish up talking a little bit about sustainability, which is absolutely in the DNA of Billerud Korsnäs now. I will, if you guys want me to direct this one way or the other, I could certainly do that. Again, I could talk about this for quite some time, but I'll focus on these subjects for the time being, and you can push me along or ask questions as we go if you want to focus on any particular area. So first of all, Billerud Korsnäs. Who is Billerud Korsnäs? Again, prior to the merger. It's a Swedish company. They are largely a packaging company, almost entirely a packaging company. 6 production facilities, largely in Sweden, although they do have one facility in Finland and one joint venture in Norway, making 3.2 million tons, $2.5 billion in sales. And while on the right side of the little chart that I've got up there, you can see board, paper, and other. That's all within the packaging realm. So they are largely a packaging company and were prior to this joint venture here. I will mention that Billerud Korsnäs is a member of the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. You'll hear that a lot. In fact, the tagline right under the Billerud Korsnäs summary is "We challenge conventional packaging in a sustainable future." That is going to be a common theme throughout this. You go to our website, you will see that all over the place. These are the facilities that Billerud Korsnäs has in Sweden. Again, most of them are right in Sweden, one in Finland, and then the joint venture with Norway is not on here. That's a pulp mill that will be coming online here in the next couple of years. The products that are made at those particular mills span a pretty wide gamut. Everything from carton board to liquid packaging to not the cardboard box itself, but the liner on both sides of a cardboard box and the fluting in the middle. Any kind of sack paper, whether that be the package that you get in the grocery store or a sack that contains cement or flour. And then on the more specialty side, some medical grades and some flexible packaging that has a little more technical aspect to it. So Verso, you probably know who we were prior to the merger. We had 3 mills, still do, really, you could say 2.5. The mill in Wisconsin Rapids is, I'm sure you all know, has been shut down. We do operate our converting facility there, but the only operating pulp and paper mills we have are in Escanaba and Quinnipiac. We make about 1.5 million tons and our sales was 1.5 billion. I think those are 2021 numbers. Our locations, as I just discussed, were in the UP. I think you probably know where Wisconsin Rapids Mill is as well. I don't know if everybody does know, but we also own Quebco, which is a hydroelectric facility in and around the Wisconsin Rapids area. So we can produce 200 megawatts, 200,000 megawatts of megawatt hours electricity annually. And then our headquarters is still in Miami. The products that we made were all in the graphical papers market for the most part, with the exception of some specialty grades that we make up in Escanaba. But they are magazines, catalogs, commercial print that you'll see largely in smaller run local communities, as well as a little bit of book product. Together as a company, you can add the numbers up. That's essentially what this slide is in, although some of these numbers are in Swedish crowns or in metric tons. But other than that, it's all just additive. I think the focus here is on the right-hand side of the chart, which shows where we do business. About half of our business is in Europe. Again, this is as a combined company now, 33% in North America, 14% in Asia, and then 4% in other. And as our product mix goes, you can see that Verso added quite a bit of graphical paper to the entire portfolio. We make up about 31% of the grade mix now between the graphic and specialty papers that we brought to Billerud. And then we have a little bit of pulp sales and a little bit of other that we also brought to the table. So we make up a pretty good chunk of this new company now. So talk a little bit about the strategy. Why did Billerud buy Verso? It starts with their strategy document. They have a strategy document that was developed in approximately 2020, looking forward for the next decade. And I'll focus your attention on the commercial side here that I blew up on this page. It's that first line in paperboard: ignite growth and focus in North America. So that has always been the plan for Billerud Partners, to find additional capacity in North America to grow their business in North America. You could certainly export it and bring it here, but it was more desirable to produce it here and sell it here. So why us? Why did essentially Verso win the lottery here? And the first part is on the left-hand side of this chart, or this page. It is a chart of our markets, printing and writing papers in roll form and sheet form for the past decade or so. And I don't know if you can all see those numbers, but they are some pretty ugly numbers, from minus 11% to minus 17%, minus 24%, minus 11%. It was a rough market. And through that existence, we obviously shut down a lot of mills. You can go back to the start of when that curve dropped off, and we were an 8-mill system. We're now down to 2 mills. And those mills are largely shut down. Some sold, but largely shut down. And then if you think about what was the genesis of, or maybe the roots of Verso, we came from Champion International, Consolidated Papers, Mead, and Westvaco. So what was left at the end after all that decline, all these mills shut down? You've got Quinnipiac, which was the flagship of Champion. You've got Wisconsin Rapids, which was the flagship of Consolidated. You had Escanaba, which was the flagship of Mead, and you had Luke, which was the flagship of Westvaco. So those were the 4 left. My point in that is that when I'm maybe putting some words in Billerud-Korsnäs's board or investor's mouth, so you take that with a grain of salt here, but what they're looking at is a bunch of mills that are really good assets, good people, but they're in a dying market. So they're probably not going to be around too long. So they saw that as an opportunity. Now, the other side of the graph, what they're looking at is the paperboard market. It's on a steady incline. There's a lot of growth potential ahead of us. It's been growing. And all these numbers are just North America. So there's an opportunity for growth. These mills are probably on their last legs. It's a great marriage. So this chart is actually pretty important here, because what you see on the left-hand side is the paperboard market condensed into a decade. So you just have 2020 and 2030, and that's the growth margin in North America, which is a significant amount. That amounts to quite a bit of board, to the tune of probably 2 brand new machines that can absorb that. But the other piece of this is that the North American paperboard market is largely SBS, or solid bleach sulfate. And what that means is, I've got a little diagram or a little depiction of it there, I guess. It's a solid layer of kraft pulp coated multiple times on the top, and then a single wash coating on the back. That's the way paperboard, which by the way, would be something like this. That's the way paperboard is made in North America. Why that is, there's probably a lot of reasons for it, but that's just the way it's made. There's another way to make paperboard, which is folding boxboard. And that takes a layer of kraft and another layer of kraft, and in the middle they sandwich mechanical pulp. That mechanical pulp offers an awful lot of bulk. Obviously, the yield on mechanical pulp is a lot better than kraft pulp, so you use less product, higher yield, and it's bulkier. And these products are typically sold on strength and on caliber. So now you can make the same product with less material, and it's lighter weight. And of course, a lot of these things end up shipping. So lighter weight and shipping is obviously a good thing. That way of manufacturing paperboard is what's predominantly done in Europe, not so much here. So there's a great opportunity in North America for substitution. So not only is this market growing, but you can substitute folding boxboard for SBS as long as it's made in a premium fashion. So that's our intent. The first machine that we convert or build is going to be a folding boxboard machine making this type of product right here. The other thing that drew Billerud-Korsnäs to us in Verso was fiber supply in the area. It's an underutilized fiber source. You think of what they're dealing with there. Their forests in Finland, Sweden. They're not in this kind of situation of growth to cut for starters. But on top of that, you throw in the war, and they get a lot of wood out of Russia, no longer getting that wood. So it's put even more strain on this. That, of course, happened after this decision was made, but it's just additional strain on the wood markets. Whereas here, we've got a surplus of wood, 2 running pulp mills in the area, a 3rd one in Wisconsin Rapids that's idle. It's a pretty nice situation. So that led to the merger. I'm guessing most people have heard about the announcement, but we merged. And I say merger because that's what our CEO calls it, but in all reality, it was an acquisition. They bought us. But just give you a little bit of insight into what it's like working for a Swedish company. They very much want cooperation within the company and within everybody they do business with. They didn't like the word acquisition, even though that's what it was. So we've been calling it a merger since our CEO came to visit. It's just a little tidbit, but it maybe gives you some insight as to what it's like working for the Swedes. It's been fantastic so far. But anyway, the announcement came out earlier this year and was wrapped up in the spring. And along with that announcement was the announcement to convert one of our machines or build a machine by 2025. And then a second machine by the end of the decade. So the future products that we'll be making, while Billerud makes a lot of different products across the packaging world, we are going to be focusing on carton board, folding box board version of carton board. And it's one of two products that are brand named by Billerud as Crown Board Prestige, which is bleached on the top and bleached pulp on the bottom. So it's white top surface, white undersurface, and then Crown Board Craft, which has a nice bleached printing surface on top, but the backside is brown. So think of a 12-pack container, or a case of beer, the underside is brown. Same thing with a lot of frozen food boxes, the underside or the inside of the box is brown. Those are the two products that we're going to be focusing on. So what does it take to do that? What you're looking at here is as we went through we just wrapped up the conceptual study, the conceptual engineering study for this project. And in the conceptual study, you look at, is it possible to do this? So we chose Escanaba, we chose E4 paper machine to do the concept study on. Now that we are into the next phase of engineering, now we look at all our alternatives and see, is there a better place to do this? Is there a better, size to the machine, speed to the machine? All those alternatives start to be looked at. But what I'll show you is a couple cutouts from our conceptual study, which again was on E4 paper machine. So you see on top is E4 paper machine. It's going to be, I'd like to be able to point to this, but I can't. The width of the sheet from width of the slide, I should say, from the left side to the right side represents the machine room that machine sits in. Okay. So this is the machine room. The machine itself starts here and the paper machine ends right there. Then there's roll storage, and then we coat the paper, and then we have more roll storage, and then we have super calendars and winders. This new machine is going to start here. The dryer section goes all the way to there. You eat up all that space, and then we have 4 coating stations instead of 2, and then we go to our winders. So it's gonna be one continuous machine, no roll storage in between, but essentially takes up that whole place, that whole space plus some. We're gonna have to fill in some floor if we want to do it at Escanaba. The head box itself, the machine that we have now is a single layer. This is essentially 3 paper machines stacked on top of one another, all coming together before it goes into the dryer or the press section. It's a considerable amount of steel. So foundational work, the height of the building, there's a ton of stuff that needs to be done yet. The point of this slide is that the only thing that really gets saved if this was done on E4 would be a few dryer cans. And we're not even so sure that that would be the right thing to do. So at the end of the day, wherever this goes, if it replaces a machine, you're going to gut the old machine and bring a new one in. So pretty massive investment. This slide here, it depicts the Escanaba mill in a block flow diagram. And if we were to do this at Escanaba, I'm going to go through this slide really quickly and show you all the things that would change. And it'll be a little bit color coded. If it's red, it means it's going away. If it's blue, it's new for the transformation project. If it's gray, it's an improvement that we kind of had in the works anyway, but it's something we're going to have to do. And then if it's green, that represents something that we would be doing for energy savings or sustainability. I think that was the last one. The point being that you don't just shut down a paper machine and build a new folding boxboard machine. Almost every other part of the mill gets touched when we do this. It is a massive, massive investment. So when you're done, this is potentially what it looks like. This is our KM7 machine, which is the latest machine built in Gruvön, Sweden. They built a brand new building and it looks like that. It's approximately 4 football fields long to house that machine. That machine was built at an existing site, but again, it was a new building, new machine. In reality, that machine makes about 500,000 tons a year, maybe a little more. The machine that we're designing is about 670,000 tons a year. So it's going to be even a little bit bigger than this. All right, now I've got a video embedded in here. It's going to be kind of hit or miss. I think you'll be able to see the video, but you won't be able to hear it, but it's all subtitled so you can read along. And I would also encourage you to go to the Billerud-Korsnäs website. The same thing is out there, or just go to YouTube and Google KM7. You don't have to know Swedish. And the point of showing you this is about a quarter to a halfway through, they start to show the inside of the building that I just showed you, and you see the paper machine and the size of it.
Is that a Swedish paper machine? Going to be built?
No, this one here is a Voith machine, which is German. You only have a couple choices nowadays. It's either Voith or Valmet, German or Finnish. So this is now the inside of that building that we just looked at. It's the backside of KM7.
How wide is it?
I think it's a little over 300 inches. We do everything in meters and centimeters there. I try to do the conversion in my head, but about that. Highly automated facility. Everything from the wet end of that machine and stock prep through storage.
Does the machine actually make the packages too, or does it just make the paper?
It just makes the paper.
Value of site, everything.
That's a really good question. But for starters, while I showed you that one chart, which by the way we refer to as the scary chart, the craft pulp mill still stays, the recovery boiler still stays. And if you had to build a brand new greenfield site with a new recovery boiler and a new pulp mill, it would be a very difficult permitting process. And B, it would be very expensive. I would venture to say it could come close to doubling the cost of this project. So having a running pulp mill is a nice feature.
Oh, this will only take SFI wood.
Uh,
We'll leave that for later.
yeah, that's a better question for somebody else. All right, the one thing you didn't hear, the nice transition for me, if you could have had sound in that, was how often sustainability was mentioned in that presentation. And I can fully appreciate that, like most other things in the United States, sustainability is one of those things that becomes political, and half the population falls on one side and half falls on the other side, and we've made it political. But it doesn't need to be. When we talk about making a product with less material, lighter weight, less energy, I mean, I don't care what you think about sustainability or if you believe in global warming or not, that's just the right thing to do. It's a good thing to do for business. So that is a lot of what we're talking about here when we talk about sustainability. It is in the product, it's a lighter weight product, and it's just more sustainable from that standpoint. Yes.
I was just curious with the coatings on it, is this biodegradable or recyclable?
It's definitely recyclable. Yes. Yeah, it'll be just like the products from a coating standpoint. I shouldn't say identical, but it'll be very similar to the coated products we make now. Just on the coating side. Okay, so the sustainability message from Billerud Korsnäs, we already talked a little bit about their tagline of "We challenge conventional packaging for a sustainable future." Well, that's backed up by a lot of things. We are in the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, which means we are one of the top 10% most sustainable companies in the world. EcoVadis labeling, we are in the top 1%, or we have their platinum labeling. And one of our biggest customers in the liquid packaging world, which is this kind of stuff, which, by the way, we will not be making on the first machine that we start up, but we make a lot of this in our company. And Tetra Pak is a huge customer of ours. They gave us an award for having the most ambitious greenhouse gas reduction efforts. And this was prior to the merger with Verso. But in the middle there, if you can read that, it says 97% fossil fuel free production. So that's pretty amazing. It certainly helps in Sweden when energy in Sweden, electrical energy that is, comes off the grid, largely produced by hydro, nuclear, and solar and wind. So we don't have that luxury here. When we buy power off the grid, it's largely produced by coal and natural gas. So the birth certificate of the electricity that we buy from a carbon footprint is much different than what they buy in Sweden. But that doesn't mean that we can't change that, and we won't go down that path. So the next thing, the graph that you see on the right-hand side is kind of scary. It is the natural sustainability metric is kilograms of CO2 produced per ton of product. And you can see the Escanaba mill is essentially 1-for-1. The Quinnesec mill, being more modern and burning more biomass, a lot more biomass at that facility percentage-wise, is in a much better spot. But the rest of those mills are all our mills in Sweden. And they have a target of getting to 0 in pretty short order. So we have a ways to go. But I'll tell you that it's not as difficult as it might appear on that graph, because think of who we were. The graph I showed you before of our markets and how we were constantly declining. We were very good at cutting costs. We had to be to survive. In fact, we went through bankruptcy once, right? So when it comes to what kind of fuel we're going to use, I can go put in a solar field or buy more biomass, or I can burn tire-derived fuel. Tire-derived fuel is way cheaper. Those are the decisions that you get forced to make when you're in a rough market. That's completely changed for us now. So some of those things we can undo. It's going to add some operating costs, but we can undo them, and we're expected to undo them again in pretty short order. So just the top 3 steps that I showed there: purchasing green electricity. We were in the business of selling green electricity. We produced it, but we sold it for its attributes, for its green attributes. We're reversing that, getting out of the business of burning coal and burning tire-derived fuel, replace as much of that as we can with biomass, work on improving our boilers to burn even more biomass. That's step 2. Step 3, we have lime kilns at both facilities that burn natural gas, get those on biofuels. Those 3 steps in themselves, plus a few energy projects, which aren't really, they're not the big movers in this graph. That gets us at Escanaba from where Escanaba is to Quinnesec. And Quinnesec is in best in class North America, where, while we stick out from the other Swedish mills, we don't stick out in North America. That's pretty normal in North America. So we will be best in class North America at that point, and then continue to invest. We're planning already next year to spend a fair amount of capital on energy reduction projects and keep improving our footprint as we go. And again, that's good all the way around. Energy reduction is good for the long-term health of the mill, period, and reduces your CO2 footprint. Great. That's a good question. It's at least what we're using in Sweden at some of our facilities, my understanding is it's a byproduct from the tall oil process. So you take the tall oil process from black liquor and pull out some of the more valuable components of that from a chemical standpoint, and then there's still valuable fuel there. And I'm sure there are other processes, gasification. I don't know a lot about this yet, but we certainly will by the time we do this. We're just researching it now and trying to learn from what they're doing in Sweden, but it's some kind of liquid biofuel. So in summary, first thing is this merger is going to end up resulting in $1 billion investment in our company, in our community. That is just a fantastic thing for all of us. Best in class energy efficiency. So not only will the machine be very modern and be very energy efficient, but we're going to be targeting capital along the way to improve the rest of our process right along with that. We'll be focusing on renewable materials. This right here versus a plastic bottle. This right here versus a plastic bottle. This right here versus plastic packaging. That seems to be the way the world is going. We were the bad guys in the paper industry for quite a while. I don't think we did a good job of advertising how actually good we were with renewable resources, but now all of a sudden the world is caught up and so this is the way to go. So that feels good, and we'll be replacing a lot of plastic packaging. Supporting hundreds of high-paying jobs. I think I'll throw up the next one here at the same time because these two kind of go together. But industry-leading production site. We've got a rich history at all our facilities, Quinnipiac to Escanaba to Wisconsin Rapids. But we were unfortunately in some pretty lousy markets. iPhone and computer just destroyed it. So it is what it is. While there are good mills and good people, the market just wasn't there to keep them alive. This is the shot in the arm that we needed. Somebody that's got the know-how, the sales force, and the financial backing to get us into the markets that are growing. It just couldn't be better for us. Our mill manager at Quinnipiac said, when he's asked the question, has this been good? He said, no, it hasn't been good. It's been great. And that is a really nice statement that this has been great for us. It's great for our industry. That's great for the UP, hopefully. Yes.
What kind of wood do they use in Sweden to make these actively fire?
Yeah, that's a good question. I should have talked about that a little bit. In Sweden, the top layer of kraft and the bottom layer of kraft have a lot of softwood in them. Particularly if it's the brown back, that's all softwood. But that's a relatively thin layer. That middle bulky layer for them is birch. They use a lot of birch. They think that maple would be a really good source to substitute for that. And the trials that we've run so far seem to prove that would be a good fiber as well.
How about aspen?
Not so much. So either the kraft or the mechanical pulp. You're looking on the mechanical pulp side, you're looking for something that offers bulk, and on the outer layers, you're looking for something that adds strength. That's not really a good fit for either. Not to say that it's zero, but it wouldn't be something that you'd make the entire product out of. All right.
Thanks, Mike. We'll go with our next and final presenter. Todd Penrose with Holly Forest Products. Going to lead into biomass markets. Just clip it on your belt or something. Flip that on. Look at this.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry about that. Somebody help him out.
Or you could hold this if you want to.
As you can tell, I'm not a professional speaker.
And you can use this to click and.
Okay, can everybody hear me all right? So I'm Todd Penrose. I'm the operations manager for Holly Forest Products. We're up in Ishpeming. It's about 60 miles north of here in Marquette County. Holly Forest Products, we're a logging company. We started back in 1964 by my father-in-law, David Holly. Dave's he's been an innovator in our industry. Back in 1988-ish, he brought over some of the first cut-to-length harvesting systems from Sweden, real high-tech stuff. He was involved in getting all that going here in the Lake States. Back in the mid-90s, he thought there's got to be better use for softwood pulp here in the Lake States. So found a partner, and together they built Sawyer Lumber Company, which is now Potlatch Delage. The idea was that we would take softwood pulp, get the high value lumber out of it, and then sell the chips to the paper. So then lately, he's had the idea that there's got to be something out there for wood chips. So back around 2010, we started chipping. And we were doing it the traditional way. At that time, there was a program, I think it was by the federal government called BTAP. If any of you were familiar with the BTAP program, that was going to be the program to get renewable sources of energy going here. Let's get guys geared up to get this equipment and start producing it. Well, it worked really well. A lot of loggers went out and bought chippers and the equipment they needed to chip. Unfortunately, they underestimated it, and I think it was literally within months. That program was out of money, was discontinued. And what happened then was most everybody that was doing chips at the time had to stop doing it. There was just no money in it. So you want me to talk about biomass markets? So first of all, I don't work for any of these companies. I apologize, I don't have anything up for Lower Michigan. A guy contacted, got back to me later last night. So here's what there is. They do have energy plants down there. You can send them to Bain, Lincoln. And I know there's one other one. There's some paper mills or mills that take clean chips down that way. But up here in the Upper Peninsula, energy is a big use for wood chips up here. Billerud, Lonsford and Electric, and there may be a plant over in Manistee. We've been working with a company that makes carbon up at the old Sawyer Air Force Base, north of here in Marquette County, a company called National Carbon. They started back in the early, actually it was built by Clifton, fuel for their plants in the mines. And then this company bought it to make the water filtration carbon. And what they found out was the market for that carbon that's used in water filtration was saturated. So they went out of business. Sucked everybody for a bunch of money. And about 5 years later, they found some new investors, came back to us and said, are you interested in providing us chips again? And we said, well, if it's what you're doing before, no, we're not interested. And he said, no, we have a new product. So if you're familiar with those pellets that you use in pellet, or around pellets, they make carbon out of that. They're a research facility. So different companies find them and say, can you make us carbon to do this. There's, through the research up there, there's a Japanese company that came to them and produced 28 rail cars of this carbon pellet that eventually was shipped out of Twin on rail car. They went out west, loaded on a boat and into Japan, run some tests out there, and they found it very favorable. Now this company started a production facility on a port out on the west coast with the goals they're going to be providing by 2025 carbon to Japanese. And what they tell me, I don't know if it's true or not, but they say that this is going to replace nuclear energy in Japan. So the plant is still going up here. Make different kinds of carbon. We'll shut the plant down to make a different product. Being a research facility, that happens from time to time. Not this past summer, the summer before, they called me and said, can you hold off sending chips for 2 weeks? No problem. 12 weeks later, they called back, okay, we're up and ready to run. Can you start sending chips again? You know, a couple $1 million worth of equipment that I had. Well, we were able to fortunately found other markets, but we can't help keep us running, but it's very up and down market. You know, even farmers are calling looking for wood chips. What they're doing is they're mixing in with their manure, makes a very good compost product. So it's very, very limited. What I want to talk about today is what do we all consider to be biomass? I mean, Jesse talked earlier about his plantations that were started specifically for biomass. But that's very limited. So what do we use? Limbs in the tops. That's probably the most common product used to make biomass. Well, in all honesty, that is the absolute worst material to try and make biomass from. So a lot of these plants, they're using it for energy. They're burning. It's very, very hard to produce and make a good quality chip due to the size of them. You got small ones, big ones. You got sometimes you're supposed to go down to 4 inches. Well, that doesn't always work if you have really crooked tops, and you got 6, 8 inch pieces of wood going in. Or what happens when you're trying to make chips out of that? Feed that material into the chipper, and it goes in, comes to an anvil. Anvil is a block of steel about this high that supports that wood as the drum is going around with the knife. The distance between the knife and the anvil, as that knife passes by the anvil, and we adjust them, we use a credit card. It's that thin of a tolerance. Somehow, when you're putting in multiple size tops like that, and you got big ones going, small ones, the small ones tend to feed faster, and they produce sticks. Actual sticks come through. Bigger diameter sticks. I don't know how they get through there. Only going through an opening is the width of a credit card, but that's what happens. And sticks creates problems with the mills and air process. They're going to have to send through hard. It goes down to a size that they need. They'll clog up their process. Tops. They also have a high moisture content. Trying to start a fire, just go and take a green top off a tree. You got leaves, bark, high percentage of needles, leaves and needles. That actually produces more ash, you know, with the final product. I know in the carbon pellet, ash is not very desirable for their customers. Higher silicon content. That's been in the dirt, the mud. Silica is not good for the final product. It's very expensive to produce. You're just taking the limbs and the tops. You would think that it's just a byproduct. It's just going to be there. The processor goes through, top is right there. Back when we were doing it, early 2010s and teens, that's what we thought too. That leave it aside and pick it up with a forwarder and bring it out, put it through a chipper. And what happens is it slows down the harvester.
We're always producing or preaching to the guys, always try and do something better for them, to help the guys coming behind. So what they're doing then is they're taking that up to almost 300 or $750,000 processor and spending the time piling tops so forward. Now the forwarders, they're only coming out with 30% of what they can hold. They should be coming out with 12 to 15 tons on it. They're coming out with 4 to 5. It's hard to load into a chipper. Because it comes out so slow, you can't have a manual when you load it. So we put in a pile, knuckle boom loader, try to take it out of the pile, it's all intertwined. It takes about 3 times as long to load the van. Plus being smaller material doesn't throw as good, and you have a hard time filling the vans. So when we got started back again with the carbon plant, we thought, we got to switch to whole tree chipping. Pulpwood size trees. And smaller diameter. Now we're producing a good quality chip. The average moisture content of that chipper, that load, is much lower. It's easier for the mill to burn. Got a lower percentage of sticks and chips out of spec. A lower percentage of bark, lower percentage of needles. Much more efficient to produce, use a feller buncher to cut the trees. Grapple skidder to skid. Grapple skidder will move the same amount of tonnage as a forwarder. Forwarder might take 20 minutes to half an hour, grapple skidder could probably do in about 5 minutes. It loads into a chipper more easily, because it has a high mass of chips being blown into a van. So we've been talking with different chip customers there. And I said we produced a whole tree chip. And we've previously produced a shortwood, but it never worked financially. Now that we've been producing these whole tree chips, get a better quality chip. So the markets, some of the guys are saying, yeah, your chips are worth more money than just the regular biomass kind of chips. So why is this important to you as forest managers? There's future markets in the Upper Peninsula and Lower Michigan that are going to be looking for this material. And if we want them to succeed, we have to be able to give them a product that they can use. We don't want to be giving them something that's going to hinder their process. Billerud's already beginning to purchase more chips. With some other large-scale markets that are developing here in the future to replace coal and capture carbon credits. I would say within the next couple of years, we're going to start to see more of these energy plants, coal burning plants that are looking for chips. There's interest in small scale biochar. I don't know if you guys are familiar with biochar. Biochar is a basically you take a wood chip and you're going to burn it, but heat it up in the absence of oxygen and turn it into carbon. And biochar is mainly being used in agricultural use. It's helping retain water in soils, helping retain moisture. I know there's some vineyards out in California that have used it and saw a 15% increase in the amount of the size of their grapes. I've seen studies where they've used biochar in planting. This is done down in South America, Brazil. But I don't even, it was, trying to remember now, probably at least a third more growth on trees annually. Plant them and use biochar, no biochar, and difference. So that's something that we're going to. So hopefully, as the value of this stuff improves, the demand for this product improves, stumpage prices for it will improve. So in order to do this, where's this fiber going to come from? Michael from Billerud just showed a nice little slide with this, the excess production right now. So we cut about a third of our growth annually, plus we're losing trees due to mortality on the stump. So this is another budding industry in Michigan that can help take care of some of that excess production. If any of you have timber sales that are not being sold because the markets, loggers say they have no market, I'd like to talk to you. Would you like to harvest more wood off your land bases because you don't have enough markets right now to do it? You know, I'd still like to talk to you. Young aspen stands work really well for this. I'll get more into that on the next slide.
What age do you got aspen?
I'd like to see around 35. Yeah, I'll go to the next slide. Couple slides, we'll talk about that. Pulpwood stands. Very good chips come from the pulp. You obviously want to be chipping bolts and logs. Even whole tree length, whole tree log, thinning operator, thinnings. You just got to make sure that enough trees are being marked. Can't go in and just mark 10-15% of the stand. So managing for fiber. Typically we grow aspen till 70 years old, 70, 80 years old, versus cutting it at 35 years old. 35, that's when you start to get some merchantable wood. You still got a lot of unmerchantable wood in there. More importantly, above your 4-inch, you might still have 20 to 25 feet of material that would normally be left behind. So you get really good per tons per acre. And we've seen cutting aspen around 35 years old. Now, as a landowner, Dave Hawley's done some financial studies on it. And if you're cut it at 35 years old, take that money and invest it 6, 7, 8% to a beauty of compound interest over the next 35 years. That money, that stumpage money is gaining value. Plus, your next standing tree will coming in on that aspen stand. And you go out there and you cut it again at 7 years. What we see is, in the end, you'll probably end up with about 3 times as much money versus just cutting it once at 70. And some would be left on the ground. And that's always been a lot of conversations I've had. People say, well, you can't take it all. You gotta leave some behind. Yeah, you can. You can cut out those smaller diameters, leave them on the ground, and just process the bigger trees. Like I said, the smaller trees, they tend to go through the chipper much faster and produce a poor quality chip. And our goal is not to bring our customers a poor quality chip. So what kind of stands or property does it take to have a whole tree chipping operation? Well, you got to be able to get a tractor trailer pulling a 52-foot van in on the property. Can't have hills that are too steep. Can't have hills that are too quick. You go over a quick hill, you know, what'll happen is the trailer will actually hold up the back of the truck, and the truck just sits there spinning its tires in the air. Can't have sharp corners. You just picture following a truck through a roundabout. You gotta have some room on that corner. Gotta have room to turn that truck and trailer around. You need about 120 feet to pull up and get the truck straight, and then the back end to the chipper. And where the chipper set in the truck, the chipper, the room needed behind the chipper to work. And you gotta have preferably flat ground for 175 to 200 feet.
What's your limit on slope?
Slope with the trucks or the,
No steep hill.
oh, steep hills for the trucks. That's what I mean with the trucks to get a truck in and out of there.
Talking about logging.
So on the logging side, self-leveling machines, I would say you're probably around 30% slope. Trucks for tractor trailer, probably about 6%. versus a truck and pump right up around 9, maybe a quick enough hill, maybe 10%. We get a lot of calls about stands that have been filled off by speed spudding. So we can just chip that. Now, dead wood is very hard on the chippers. There's no moisture in it. You need that moisture to keep the knives lubricated. Do dead wood. And it tends to heat the knives up, burn them down very quickly. It doesn't produce a good quality chip. It tends to pull apart as it's being chipped. A lot of oversized. Chippers tend to clog these. You want to ruin a cruise day. Chipper clogs up the chute on it. A lot of work cleaning those out. So in Michigan, yeah, we only harvest approximately a third of our growth. If someone knows anything different, let me know on that, but you know, a third of our growth, plus we're also losing timber. Billerud, you know, very glad Billerud's come to town and all their plans, and we do have brownwood too. But with these new markets coming on for wood chips, we have an opportunity to exist now to expand forest products industry here in Michigan with additional management. We as forest managers and in the timber industry, we need to be able to provide them a good usable product. We want them here. And if you're putting together your timber sale contracts, think twice about putting a restriction on tree length logging. I think it could be a very good option for you. Any questions? Yeah, we're taking the tops and limbs right through the whole tree. Yep.
What happened? About 10 or 15 years ago, the slash lawnmower was really being promoted as a way to utilize limbs and tops and produce energy.
I'm thinking, I know we were showing it and stuff, but I think what it was is probably too expensive. And maybe they just couldn't get enough bundle on to make it work. But, economically, it probably just didn't work.
What is the ideal moisture on the tree?
Greenwoods are going to be over 50%, between 50 and 60%. And make the right kind of chip, you know, it'll help dry quicker too, once it gets to the mill.
Is there, looking at a job that you're thinking about doing both chip in, is there like a size in terms of volume of the job, that like a minimum size that would kind of make that work eventually?
Number of acres? Or
Like
volume?
acres or like tons of volume there. That's kind of like a bare minimum where make it worth the time. That's what there.
Yeah, let's say 30 acres. If you go in there and cruise it to a 4-inch top, 18-20 quarters of an acre. And typically what we'll see is you go in there and do a cruise and convert that to tons. It's common to see an additional, 1.5 times that volume. We've seen it as high as doubling.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Todd.
Okay, so the last half hour, we're almost there. See, the divider is being open, but we still got another half hour yet before we move on to the next item. But our last presenter has some conflicts pop up this morning, and so we moved some things around. And for this last half hour, we're going to be going through move the awards So this last segment, and then we'll just dive into some last minute housekeeping stuff, some things to do with the tours tomorrow, and then we'll cut things loose. So just bear with us for the last little bit. What's that? Yeah, it's in that PowerPoint, I think. Yeah. Is there the other two? These ones?
Oh,
Do
yeah,
those?
yeah, well, I'll do that also.
Oh, okay.
I'll do it after this.
Okay.
I got it. You still awake? All right, just a couple notes. Right now. All right, hey, one of the cool things that we do, I think, one of the cool things we do as a state society is recognize and award our fellow foresters for doing really cool things out in the woods and other lands. And one of the pieces of awards that we hand out are these membership pin awards for the numbers of years of service. So I'm not going to go, I don't have to go line by line for each, but maybe we'll just get a round of applause, at least for the folks who are here. Are any of the 10-year folks in the room who are on here? Katie, Steve Handler, any of those folks? This is back when 50 Shades of Grey came out. The last Twilight movie came out. You remember that? All right, none of those people are here. All right. How about anyone on the 20-year list? I thought Georgia's here, right? Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. That was the movie that came out when you joined SAF, and the Red Wings won a Stanley Cup that year. Yeah, wrap it up. How about anybody in the 30-year category? There's some in the back. Hey, 30 years is cool because the gallon of gas back in 1992 was $1.05. And I think you get a pound of bacon for under $2. John Gotti was sentenced to life that year too. So if you remember 1992, represent. Right on. Yeah, can you raise your hand if you're on the list? Yeah, come on up. Yeah, if you're here, come on up. Why not? If you're here, come on up. All right, if you're on the 40-year list, come on up as well. That was 1982. Remember the Commodore 64 personal computer? I don't. E.T. was released. Remember Elliot going home? Right on. So we have some 50-year members as well. In fact, we have some plaques back here for 50-year members. I don't know that those folks. Oh, we do have one. We do. Al here. Yeah, come on up, Al. Congratulations. (1972) Grease hit Broadway. Gasoline was 29 cents a gallon. 29 cents a gallon for gasoline. That's the year I got married. The year you got married, and David Bowie did Ziggy Stardust that year. Come over. Yeah, let's get a proper photograph. Congratulations. Thank you. Oh, here's the quick one. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, that would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. We even have a 60-year number of SAF. In some ways for SAF uncharted territory, no plaques or any kind of award like that. That was 1962 when Walter joined SAF during the Cuban Missile Crisis. That was when John Glenn became the first American to orbit the Earth. Kind of wild, to put that in perspective. So congratulations to our pin recipient. We also, as a state society, award 3 other awards. One for Young Forester of the Year, one for Retired Forester of the Year, and one for Forester of the Year, which Mike calls Middle-Aged Forester of the Year. And so I'm gonna try my best as not the awards chair. Craig would be doing a much better job of this, but I'm gonna try my best to award these awards. So first we'll start with Retired Forester of the Year. It's gonna be tough for me to do Retired Forester of the Year without just totally spilling the beans. So maybe we'll just do that right here on the front end. So I'd like to congratulate Mr. Bill Cook for Retired Forester of the Year. Come on up. So even though Bill is retired from MSU Extension, he put statistics together as regular forestry articles that now numbers in the 300s. The quote that we got from your nominator was, I frequently see these articles in my local newspaper, and it's generally the item most worth reading in the paper. Bill regularly,
Small town newspaper.
that's right. Bill regularly communicates with the broad forestry community and passes important items onto all that could be interesting, including forestry news, events, educational opportunities, meetings, and even notes of the passing of fellow foresters. Bill's the person that keeps all of us up to date on Michigan SAF matters, which is very true. You should also be recognized for his work with the Believe It or Not Forestry Educational Video Series. It brings students and adults closer to understanding forests and our trees in Michigan, Georgia. And Georgia as well, as Bill said. Bill's completing his 10th year as editor of the outstanding Michigan Forest magazine and is very active in the Michigan Forest Association. This was the other quote that the nominator added. My experience in knowing Bill Cook is that if a forestry volunteer is needed to make something happen, Bill steps up and gets it done. Bill demonstrates well the traditions of public service that foresters have valued since the very beginning of our profession. And this he has carried into his busy retirement. So congratulations, Bill.
The bourbon drink,
One of many. All right. Next, we'll do Young Forester. It's kind of cool, because I'm pretty sure this person is also. This person's committed to helping landowners sustainably manage their woodlots in order to conserve one of Michigan's most valuable resources, trees. Through that, ecosystem integrity is upheld through forest management planning, wildlife habitat conservation planning, strategic harvest, invasive species eradication, and helping landowners enroll in Michigan's property tax programs, as well as the variety of public service forest management plan programs. This person serves on the Ottawa Area ISD Advisory Board for Outdoor Education, spoken at a variety of local conservation clubs and municipalities, and built forest management plans for civic and county spaces. He served as Michigan SAS Lower Peninsula Board Chair in the past, and is an active member and in good standing. The scope of this forester's work has left a positive impact on the environment the economy, private landowners, and industry business owners and employees. Congratulations, Brett Kuipers. All right, and that brings us to our final one, Forester of the Year. This forester is the leader in their current role. That leadership extends beyond their organization and throughout the local industry. Trusted business partner who respects folks' time, but always being timely with communications, maintains a positive attitude regardless of the circumstance, and is always willing to help out. If the success of a forester can be based on how contractors perceive them, then this person must be doing something right. Because even unprompted, the contractors that they work with always appreciate working with them and have nothing but positive things to say, which as a forester we know can be rare. Congratulations to this year's Forester of the Year, Matt Brooks. I don't know that Matt is here, but I believe there was someone who was willing to accept the award. Were you going to accept the award? Oh, Kyle, right on, man. So congratulations to Matt. Kyle, this would be a great photo, man. Not a weird photo? I know, come on, we're gonna impersonate it. Come on, get in there. One of these. Good job, Kyle, yay! Okay, you take that. All right. I think I just, I did want to mention that we did have a national level award recipient recently at the convention in Baltimore a couple weeks ago. Larry Celesta is a conservation district forester out of Cadillac, covering Wexford, Misaki, and Kalkaska counties. And Larry was recently awarded with the Presidential Field Forester Award, which is awarded within the regions of SAF as having demonstrated an outstanding career dedicated to forestry on the ground in the field. And so if you have an opportunity to see Larry, congratulate him, because this is an award amongst the whole region. So Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. And he's very deserving of this award. So if you do see him, congratulate him. One more thing I turn over to you, Bethel. Did you guys learn a lot today? Yeah. A couple people think so. Good talk. So I learned some stuff. Thought it might be interesting to just take a minute here and let you know what I learned. You think that's okay, Mike? All right.
The kegs are not tapped.
The kegs are not tapped, so you got time for a little synopsis of what I learned. Structural complexity, like tree size and density, is one thing to manage for children. And functional traits, like tree composition, makes adaptive capacity. Doug Fir and Pure Stand is a marketing brand for monocultures in Western states. Western larch is a hipster. Those hills could leave blisters on a forester from the Great Lakes. Tree range atlas and tree range expansion are both in the climate change guide. Forest risk factors and certification standards are a couple of things Stephen hoped you find. Light detection and ranging show that forests are changing and management should be the same. Hill shade and aspect help us to collect data without going out in the rain. The former FBIC looks at genetics of trees and other cultivars of plants, from Hyde to Dunbar to Wells, so Jesse tells that beer can turn into glance. For 23 years, the UPLC has protected, preserved, and maintained permanent protection and careful selection forests for the future sustain. Not sure if you heard, but forest dwelling birds are down nearly 17%. Will birds tell our story of forest management glory, which is really our society's intent? Communal hibernation creates a sticky situation for species of bats in the state, but Keith has a plan for conservation and limiting incidental take. Fluting and liner has never been finer than the stuff that Billerud makes. Paper for sacks and boxboard for snacks, a mill that's had some tough breaks. Markets for chips have had ups and had dips, but it seems like they're gaining some favor. It's a worthy cause, and I guess that's because trees are more than just wood and paper. Okay. Joe's next.
You could be a rap star.
You weren't paying attention to that. Okay, just a few last things, just some housekeeping things here. First off, in the morning, the itinerary shows that there is a breakfast. There is not a breakfast. Sorry, I know, I wasn't made aware of that today. But there is a restaurant on site at the other end. It opens at 7 o'clock in the morning. Otherwise, I mean, most of us, a lot of us are used to gas station food too. There's a gas station. But hey, you know. But anyways, so that opens at 7 o'clock in the morning. From 7 to 8:30, that's your time to be getting checked out, breakfast, whatever you need to do. And then at 8:30 is when we'll carpool to your location or where you're going to be meeting. So if you're on the silviculture tour with Julia, we will be meeting at the casino. I guess I didn't talk to her about it, but I think that'll be the easiest if we just meet out back here. And then from there, we'll head to the woods. So we can all be in the back if you're on that tour. It was tour option 1, and then we'll head out to the woods from there. Option 2, if you're going to go to Billerud, to the paper mill, if what we're going to do is have, if you're on that tour, to minimize vehicles and parking at Billerud, we are going to be at the Lime Great Lakes office. You can see up there, the address is typed in there on the top bar. I'll leave that up there. There is a sign out on 426. It's a makeshift sign. It's right below Superior Lumber there. Same driveway. It's also the same location that and so when those people get there by 8:30, what you'll do is, if you can, consolidate into cars and carpool, correct, over to which entrance?
Back gate on the highway.
Okay, so that's the one that all the trucks would go into, heading in by the guard shack. Okay, so park to the left of the guard shack. Okay, so there'll be a bus by the guard shack. Okay.
Where the old arms, right?
Yeah. Okay. And then, so yeah, we'll try and be over there, before 9 o'clock, same thing. The technology tour with Mark Books and Darian Yon with Landmark Spatial Solutions, that will be at the Lime Great Lakes office as well. So that'll be, try and be there by 9 o'clock. It doesn't take too awful long to get there from here, but I'll leave the address up there. There should be enough parking around the back side or in the front side, or there's 10 acres there where there's not logs. So we'll try and find some room there.
Do we have to sign in somewhere?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. If you want 3 CFEs,
There are sign-in sheets at each tour. So Michael is leading the birds tour, and so he's got sign-in sheets for that. Fred Say has the sign-in sheets for the mill tour tomorrow morning. Myself and Joe, we will have the sign-in sheets for the forest tour. And what I just blank out on.
technology.
The technology tour, Mark and Darren have the sign-in sheets for the technology tour. So see your tour host, because you definitely need to sign in if you want 3 CFEs tomorrow morning.
You don't have to come down here.
No, that's so. So the last tour with Michael and the birds, I think we talked, we meet outside in the back here as well. So that one will leave from here. 8:30 is when you'll be leaving here. That gives you a half hour to get to the location and then start from there.
Bird one's at 7 a.m. No, that was Kansas.
Yeah, yeah.
That was before we bought 2 kegs of beer.
Yeah. Another thing, just thank you to all the speakers that took time out of their day to come and present today. It was a really good day. So if we can just give a round of applause for them. As far as how things are going to go the rest of the evening here at 5 o'clock is when we'll be able to go in the back corner back here. From 5 to 6 will be happy hour. At 6 o'clock, we'll have to be back in here at our tables, and for supper, they'll release us by tables again, just like they did for lunch. So if you got to grab an extra beverage to come back over here, just saying. And then after supper, we will do the raffles, the Daphne in the back corner. You want to stand up? Or why don't you come up here? And then while she's making her way up, students, could the students stand up again? Wow. Glad to see you all volunteered. Perfect. Daphne, I'm sure you can find, I think if we can get 6 of you to help, I think we've got 3 rolls of tickets. And if we can just have, one person can handle the cash, one can handle the tickets, and she'd appreciate any help she can get. There's some great prizes back there, some raffle prizes. Thanks to all that donated anything back there. Looks like a really good assortment of stuff.
Also, so I just became the education fund chair. Typically we send the funds that we raise at these meetings to the national fund. But I would like to give it back to Michigan student chapters. So if you guys have ideas of trainings, workshops, professional development, something cool, but that might be like financially unfeasible outside of like a group activity like this, please come talk to me. Let me know your ideas. I want like this money to go back to all of you. So thank you.
You can leave it on your pros.
Hey everyone, my name is Kraus. I work at Michigan Technological University in the College of Forest Resources and Environmental Science. If you have been or are affiliated with Michigan Tech, can you raise your hand? Free beer for you tomorrow back in Houghton. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's a lot of people. I'm really glad that y'all are here and that we are representing Michigan Tech here at SAF. I just wanted to do a little call out. If you didn't receive an email from me today or like yesterday or 2 days ago, and you have a business that's hiring in the next year or 2 years, Michigan Tech's College of Forest Resources and Environmental Science hosts a specifically natural resources career fair each year. It's way different than the rest of the career fair that happens down campus. It's just for the engineers. None of our students go to that. So don't advice, like don't ever sign up for that one, just come to ours. So if anybody is interested in signing up for the career fair at Michigan Tech in Houghton, it is happening on November 3rd is like the full day from 10 to 2-ish. And then we also allow speakers from each company to come in the night before and give like a 5 to 10 minute presentation about their company and the jobs that they have opening. So if you haven't gotten an email from me, including today, like I sent out an email earlier, so please check and see if you got one from me with the invite. come find me and let me know your email and what company you work for, and I would love to invite you, even if not this year, I know it's coming up really quickly. I would love to invite you in the future, so, thanks.
Okay, yeah. And then, while I'm pulling up some other things here too, I also do want to thank all the exhibitors on the sides that took time out of their days to be here too, so looks like we had a great turnout there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much to all the sponsors and the vendors that came out. We really appreciate your support of Michigan SAF, and thank you very much.
Take out your program and flip over to the back side of your program. As we're nearing the end of the fall Michigan SAF meeting here, it's not too early to get some dates on your calendar for 2023. And for spring of 2023, we're looking at March 30 and 31st. That's a little bit early usually for us. We're usually doing spring SAF in April, but the first week of April is Easter, and then we get into tree sale season, and then the end of April is finals season. So we're going to try it a little bit earlier, March 30 and 31st. We're going to be back at Kirtland Community College in Grayling, and I'm going to jump off a cliff with a theme, and we're going to try to do TED Talks. I'm going to try to get 20 of your peers to get up here and give a 15-minute TED Talk. That's a challenging assignment, and it's going to be either spectacular or less than spectacular. I'm not sure which. It's a challenging assignment to come up here and give a TED Talk, but that's what I'm shooting for the spring. Give us some feedback already for starting to plan, the fall meeting next year. Joe and Alex and others, Amber have put a lot of work into planning this meeting. We're, trying to figure out, when and where to do the fall meeting, and the sooner we get that planned, the better. So, I threw some potential dates on there, October 12 and 13. Check out your calendar. Give Joe feedback tonight. When's a good time? When's a good location? Did you like this location? Would you like to come back here again? Would you rather be up in Marquette? Do you have, give us some really good feedback, specific feedback on dates and locations for the fall. And then National SAF next year is October 25 to 29 in Sacramento. Joe, you could bring up the White Oak. Oh, great. Yeah, can we scroll down a little bit?
Yeah, I just got to look over there.
Yeah, that is challenging. So here in Michigan, there's a coalition of about a dozen groups that are partnering with the American Forest Foundation on their National White Oak Initiative. And one of the partners on that Michigan coalition is Michigan SAF. And we've been given, I think, $2,500 to put on a webinar series on white oak. That's a little too far down there, Joe. But we're going to do a series on white oak, looking at ecology and silviculture, insects and disease, markets and economics, looking at a variety of topics. It's going to be the first Wednesday of each month, starting in November from 3 to 4:30 in the afternoon. It's no cost to attend, to participate, but don't be surprised if I send you a few more emails between now and November 2nd to invite you to participate in this White Oak webinar series. So yeah, with that, thank you very much. Here you go, Joe.
Yeah. So I think that should be it for today. Like I said, at 6 o'clock, that's when we'll try and be back at the tables. That way we can get on to supper, and then we'll announce raffles towards the tail end of supper time, and then see where the night goes. So, thank you.
That college store I got it.
I'm sure there is.
I think it's.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, Kenny, still out there on Zoom. That wraps things up and we'll be ending the afternoon fall session. Thanks for joining us.